right. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. I am. I have it's like American. Fight for what's right.
Fight for your life.
What's good?
When it comes crashing down and it hurts inside.
Sorry,
You
guys.
gotta take it, it don't help to hide.
We were watching a little Hulk Hogan playing the guitar and singing
Well,
Real
you
American.
hurt my friends and you hurt my pride. I gotta be the man. I can't let it. I'm telling you, dude. Hey, man. The glory days of the WWE, man. The glory days of the WWE. And I'm telling you. I mean, the guys back in the day weren't as athletic as they were now. But, you know, as we mentioned earlier in the show, when you're a kid and you're and really you're looking at Hulk Hogan and, you know, he cuts the famous 5-minute promos
Right,
like he
yeah.
usually does. You know, well, you know something, me, Gene. You know, I talk to my Hulkamaniacs and the prayers and the vitamins and stuff. And you're saying, oh, man, Hulk Hogan is great. I love him. You know, this and that and everything else. And then you start to grow up and you start to look at Hulk and you're like, man, dude, you had 3 solid moves. The shirt rip, the Hulk up, and the leg drop.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, cause think about it, dude. If you go back and watch a lot of the pay-per-views back in the day, the better matches of those pay-per-views really were the mid cards. Okay, think about when you ask a lot of people, if you talk about the golden era of the WWE when it was the WWF at the time, you would say to yourself, what are some of the greatest matches in WWF history in the golden era, right? I am guaranteeing you Hulk Hogan's name is not going to come out of a lot of people's mouths.
Right.
Because, I mean, let's just briefly look at some of the main events, right? WrestleMania 1 was the tag team match, right? That wasn't that great. WrestleMania 2 was Hogan versus King Kong Bundy. That was okay. WrestleMania 3 was Hulk versus Andre. That was an iconic match, but it wasn't necessarily a great match.
It was one move. It was him. Body. It was what was it? The body slam or what do you call it? He suplexed him, didn't he?
Yeah, he body slammed Andre, which at the time was unprecedented, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So basically, Hulk Hogan had to hope that Andre could at least last for 30 minutes to at least get to that slam, so then they can end WrestleMania 3. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that great of a match.
Yeah.
Then you look at WrestleMania 4, Hulk Hogan wasn't even in the main event. That's when they put the title on Macho Man Randy Savage. But then WrestleMania 5 was Savage versus Hogan. WrestleMania 6 was Warrior versus Hogan. WrestleMania 7 was Slaughter versus Hogan. That's when the United States invaded Iraq. Then WrestleMania 8 was a co-main event for whatever reason, but the main event was Hogan versus Sid Justice. That was okay.
You're like a WrestleMania historian, man. You're ratting all them off.
I watch this stuff at will, bro. But all I'm saying is all those matches that I just mentioned, when you look at them now, they really weren't that great. But if you talk about some of the greatest matches ever, Steamboat versus Savage, WrestleMania 3 Intercontinental Championship, considered one of the greatest matches of all time. Or what's another good one? Bret Hart, he won the Intercontinental Championship against Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam 91 or 90. Great match. When the Texas, that wasn't that great. Bret Hart wins the Intercontinental title and defends it against the British Bulldog at SummerSlam 92.
Yeah.
Great match. Those were great matches. The Intercontinental title matches were great matches. The heavyweight championship matches during the golden era were not that great.
It makes you realize that like a lot of wrestling back then was cutting promos and personality, you know, and really being able to like gain fans because like I was in Pennsylvania last week and thanks again for holding it down for me, man. But
yes,
I was in the hotel room bored as hell and on the local CW channel came on Ring of Honor, is it? I think it's Ring of Honor.
ROH,
so
yep.
So I was like, you know what? There's nothing left on right now. I'm kind of doing some work. Just want something in the background. So I threw it on. And I think I probably saw better matches in the Ring of Honor than I seen in WWF in the 90s and even like early 80s. Like some of the moves that these guys were doing were serious, and there was one of these dudes was a big dude, like, which is another thing. It's like big dudes back in the 80s and 90s was like choke slam, power bomb, and maybe one of them was athletic enough to go up on the ropes. But you see big guys now doing flips. You see big guys jumping out of the ring. So yeah, I think we're starting to understand what a cult of personality is when it comes to Hulk Hogan.
Hey, wait, Kent Williams, thank you. So WrestleMania 9 was Yokozuna versus Bret Hart. Bret Hart was the WWF champ at the time, and he lost it to Yokozuna. And then for whatever reason, actually I do know what the reason is, because I've heard the shoot interviews for a lot, but Hulk Hogan comes out, and then Yokozuna for some reason challenges Hulk Hogan for the title, and then Hogan beat him in like literally 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what was the point of this? Because then literally a month later, was it a month later? Yeah, it had to be a month later, because I think the pay-per-view was, I want to say it was this Tuesday in Texas, but I don't think that's what it was. Mm-hmm. But Yokozuna ends up getting the title back, and then he held it for a while until he lost it at WrestleMania 10 to Bret Hart in the double championship match, because that's when Hart and Lex Luger both went over the top at the same time at the Royal Rumble. Right. So they let Luger go first, and then Luger loses to Yokozuna by disqualification with Mr. Perfect, and then Bret Hart ended up winning it later on. But then remember, Bret Hart also wrestled twice that night, because the original match in WrestleMania 10 was Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, and that's when Bret put Owen over. And then that's when that kind of like escalated Owen Hart to start becoming Intercontinental Champ, because later on in the same pay-per-view, one of the best matches ever was Razor Ramon, or Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, against Shawn Michaels in the first ever Intercontinental Championship ladder match. You know what I'm saying? So that's so I'm with Kent, dude. That WrestleMania that WrestleMania 9 as a whole was not that great. The concept was great. They did it at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. They did like togas and everything, but the match qualities in that were garbage. Yeah. Like if you look at a shoot interview with Lex Luger, they asked him about that, because when Luger defected from WCW and signed with the WWF, he came in as the narcissist. And his first match was against Mr. Perfect. He said Curt Hennig went into the locker room, told him how they were going to do the whole match, told him that he would kind of walk him through and talk him through the match. And Lex Luger says that Curt Hennig, either he got way too drunk or he got some kind of concussion and totally forgot the entire match. So Lex totally forgot what he was supposed to do too. Yeah. And that match was awful, by the way. That match was terrible. Yeah. So yeah, dude, I'm with Kent. That WrestleMania 9 match between Bret and Yoko with Hogan, and it was stupid. If you would have just left it Bret versus Yoko like it was supposed to be, that's fine. But then Hulk Hogan has to come into the spotlight, because he has to be the man. And Vince McMahon just has to let him get his way. Dude, piss off that. That was stupid.
Man, that's going in the Wayback Machine with some of that. So we could basically do a whole podcast on wrestling alone with you, man. You're a wrestling historian.
Week, I don't know if you listened to any of the show last week, but I definitely started off with talking WWE, because at that point the Elimination Chamber was over with and everyone was hating on The Miz for being world champion. But here's the thing too. For some reason, Vince McMahon really loves big guys, big, tall guys. Like if you look at some of the champions back in the day, Hogan, he loved the Ultimate Warrior, because the Ultimate Warrior was he was a muscle guy. Yeah. So Vince loved the Ultimate Warrior. But Kevin Nash, Kevin Nash, he put the belt on Kevin Nash, and Kevin Nash, or AKA Diesel was one of the worst rating champions in WWE history. Wow. Like, people, like, it was fun that he won it, but then you looked at his matches and you're like, this stuff's boring. You're better off putting the title on Razor than you were putting on Kevin Nash. But Nash, you look at now, Lashley, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar had it for a long time. The Big Show's been champ. You know, The Rock's 6'5", Triple H is like 6'3", Stone Cold's like 6'3". You know what I'm saying? These
Roman
big
Reigns.
guys.
You say Roman Reigns?
Roman Reigns, he's champ. He's Universal Champion now. So for some reason, outside of guys like Seth Rollins and maybe even Rey Mysterio, because he just wanted to throw Rey Mysterio a bone. You know, Sid Vicious. Sid Vicious was a world champion for a while. The Undertaker has been world champion. Kane has been world champion. The Great Khali has been world champion. So, I mean, Batista's flipping huge. I can go all day. But Vince loves big guys. He hates putting the world championship on small guys unless your name is AJ Styles or Rey Mysterio. That's it.
And even to like a certain extent, like, wasn't there that era where like WWE was just bringing in nothing but big guys, and then like TNA and some of these other wrestling organizations were like, we'll take these, you know, cruiserweights or whatever you want to call it, and you know, like back in the day, that TNA, like that TNA event,
X Division is what they called it.
And that was dope, man. That was one of those things where you're like, you know, I'm looking at that and going, wow, this is like a breath of fresh air, because you're right, it's just like so much big muscle beefiness when it came to the WWE product. So
Aaron says CM Punk was a regular dude. I give you that.
True,
but CM Punk was super over. You know what I'm saying? So you ain't had no choice. Like, the best time the WWE ever put any title on CM Punk was when his contract was going up, and they did a pay-per-view in Chicago. I want to say it's Money in the Bank, but I think I'm wrong. And bro, I've been to Raw at the Allstate Arena many of the times when John Cena has been in there. I will say that Chicago is not a fan of John Cena. Like, dude, I remember going to a pay-per-view, and then when Mish was doing Wrestling Soup, I was listening to it on the way home. And he was like, hey, if you were at the pay-per-view, call. So I hit him up. I was like, dude, I'm leaving there right now. So he was like, hey, man. He was like, how was the crowd reaction to John Cena coming out? I was like, dude, they were booing the piss out of him. I was like, dude, it was so loud. Like, as soon as his music hit, boo, boo, boo. But according to Mish, he said that on the broadcast, you could hear like a slither of boos, but you could hear more of the kids cheering. I said it was the complete reverse opposite live.
Wow.
I'm telling you, you could hear a few kids cheering, but all the beer guzzling guys that hate John Cena for whatever reason were booing the piss out of him.
Yeah, they're like, you made my son wear a head. My son is dressing like a black kid now, man. What's going on? You got him wearing headbands, and you know, because there was a huge section of wrestling fans who were pissed off at that era of John Cena, which was like the Can't See Me and sort of like some of the attitude hip hoppy stuff, and it was like a weird reaction to that of like, we want and I think also it was part of it was like, remember, like, the WWE was so it was so like character driven when we were watching it, and then I think when like the and under the 90s hit and the early 2000s hit is when some of the sort of the sensitivity came, and they said maybe we can like relate these people to like, you know, kind of people in real life and less like fantasy characters. So I think you saw a lot more pushback on like some of these guys, like even like CM Punk towards the end. I know like he was like a cult hero, but I think like at the same time there was a lot of people like growing a little bit, you know, because remember he like broke, what do they call it, kayfabe, where he was he was on the mic and kind of went unscripted, and you know there's a lot of wrestling purists who were like, that's not wrestling, you know, we need to go back to, you know, the days of the and to me it's like the days of the 80s, like some of that you look back on and you're like, that was corny as hell, man. Like some of that raw stuff was corny.
Because think about it, bro. back in the 80s, if you couldn't cut a promo, you pretty much weren't wrestling.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, you have mouthpieces. You know, you have the Paul Heymans,
yeah,
and then you have like MVP, because MVP has to be a mouthpiece for Bobby Lashley, because Bobby Lashley can't cut a promo.
Yeah.
He couldn't cut a promo in his original run in WWE. He couldn't cut a promo when he was in TNA, and he definitely can't cut a promo again. He needs CM Punk. You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, Ric Flair didn't need no mouthpiece. Hogan didn't need a mouthpiece. The Ultimate Warrior should have had a mouthpiece, but he didn't need him there. You know what I'm saying? So cutting promos back in the day was what I felt was a little bit more important than wrestling, where now wrestling is a lot more important than the promo. So it's the switch. But I'll tell you this, dude. I think what ultimately killed John Cena was when the WWE went PG, because John Cena was at his best when he was going out freestyling on folks and making fun of people. But then once he started becoming the goody two shoes champ, like I'll even go as far as when he won his original undisputed championship when he beat JBL, because they were going on this huge feud where when John Cena won the United States title, he turned it into like the spinning United States title.
That's right.
And then,
that's right. Yeah.
Right. And then when he lost it, it went after the WWE Championship when he won the Royal Rumble, which was held by JBL at the time. JBL was like, "You're not going to turn the WWE Championship into some hip hop freak show."
Right.
And
Exactly.
Ended up beating him, and still ended up turning the WWE symbol into a spinner.
Right.
He was still cool at that time.
Right.
But then it just started to fall off because the WWE decided to go so PG for whatever reason.
Right.
And a guy like John Cena that could have maybe benefited from a heel turn wasn't going to get it, because the last thing the WWE needed was, how dare you turn? Some Karen is going to hit up Vince McMahon and talk about, how dare you turn him into a heel? Now my son is sad. I ain't never seen him cry like that before. Oh, piss off. Dude, I've seen Shawn Michaels throw Marty Jannetty through a window. I saw Hulk Hogan turn on Randy Savage and turn WO, and we weren't crying about that.
Bret Hart spit a huge loogie into Vince McMahon's face. And
we're going to bitch and moan over John Cena turning heel because your kid has all the Fruit Loop Skittles beer.
Skittle gear. See, I guess this is natural in life, but like when you look back at that and you go, "Oh no, people thought that was cool," or like, that even at sometimes I look back and go, some of the characters in the WWE where I was like, man, I remember I was really into that, and now I'm just embarrassed by that. I can't believe I was like into the Misfits and some of these like other like weird like characters that the WWE came up with. So,
Kent Williams brings up, just last point. Kent Williams brings up a good point. If you have the WWE network, I would go watch some of the ECW pay-per-views.
Yeah.
ECW pay-per-views, all right, ECW may have been like a so-called low-budget Fed or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
Dude, those ECW pay-per-views were actually Money in the Bank.
Yeah.
One of my favorite matches in ECW to this day will forever be when Mike Awesome took on Masato Tanaka for the ECW championship.
Yeah.
Dude, that match was nuts. And Mike Awesome, I wouldn't say if he was still alive, but if he ever had gone to the WWE instead of WCW, he'd have been world champ in 3 weeks. That kind of muscle guy that Mike Awesome was had WWE champion written all over it.
Yeah.
But then he went to WCW, and then they made him Party Mike Awesome or some stupid shit. I don't remember what it was. It was so stupid. And Mike Awesome, and then like a few years later, Mike Awesome ended up taking his own life. But I'm just saying, dude, I think the biggest mistake is he went to WCW because they looked at him as a joke. Because at the time he went to WCW, that's when the NWO is at its peak.
Yeah.
And, even though I think Mike Awesome would have been a great WCW champion, the way that the NWO was being run, you weren't going to get a title run past Nash, past Savage, or past Hogan. No matter how good you were, you weren't going to get, or past the Big Show.
Yeah.
You weren't going to get anything past those guys.
Right.
But in the WWE at the time, if you played your cards right, I'm pretty sure Mike Awesome would have found himself a spot, especially in that ruthless aggression era that went on. I think Mike Awesome really would have thrived during that era, but I think he just went to the wrong spot.
Yeah, and there's a couple of those ECW guys who maybe stuck around in the ECW a little bit too long and maybe got to the WWE a little bit too late, and yeah, and then they kind of. But I agree. I thought ECW was, to me, even as a kid, I saw that as a realer product than the WWE or the WCW, because you look at that and go, you know, like, what's his face is banging on his head. I think it was Sid Vicious banging on his head with the kendo stick, and then just, you know, pounding beer, and you're like, this is what Stone Cold
Sandman,
sorry, Sam, yeah, and he's chugging beers like Stone Cold, and you're like, this is what Stone Cold would be like if he was really real. You know what I'm saying? Like,
okay. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because Michael P.S. Hayes in a shoot interview said that Stone Cold Steve Austin you see now is who Stone Cold Steve Austin was supposed to be when he was in WCW, being stunning Steve Austin,
with the weird blonde,
talking about he's from Hollywood and stuff. They said that's not Steve Austin.
No.
He said all his life Steve Austin's been been the country beer drinking kind of guy. That's who he was. So the Stone Cold that you saw, because remember when he came into WWF, he was the ringmaster, and then that didn't go over well. So then he became Stone Cold Steve Austin, and the character just blew up. Like, I don't even think that Vince or Steve Austin himself ever thought that he was going to get as big as he did. But dude, Stone Cold was first, and then people forget that The Rock almost was fired from the WWE, because when he was Rocky Maivia, I remember when he won the Intercontinental title, and then when he went to WrestleMania 13, he was Rocky Maivia, and I was there at WrestleMania 13. They was kind of booing Rock, and at that point they took the title off him, and then they were like, we don't know what to do with him. And I forget who it was. I think it was Mick Foley himself. It's like, why don't we make The Rock a heel? Why don't we turn Rocky into The Rock, let him join the Nation of Domination, and let's see if that'll be better. And that's what they did. Remember, he turned on the Nation. I mean, he turned with the Nation on a Monday Night Raw, and then his character blew up. Because by the time The Rock started to mature was when Stone Cold kind of was getting ready to kind of relinquish the Intercontinental Championship, but they had some wars with it. And then that's when Stone Cold said he had bigger fish to fry, so he threw the Intercontinental title into the river, then decided to go after the WWF title, and then they started meeting paths. But even Aaron says it. We saw Stone Cold Steve Austin turn heel on Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 17 when he beat The Rock, and you didn't see nobody crying the blues about that. But God forbid if John Cena happens to turn heel because my 5-year-old son goes around talking about strength, loyalty, and respect.
I was gonna say, it's like he got my kid wearing crazy colors, and now he can't wear his favorite shirt anymore, his favorite orange shirt.
Because give me a face. Oh, give me a face. Let's say if he was going against Randy Orton, who was a face, because he turned on Randy Orton and now he's a heel. Now my kid won't watch wrestling anymore. He's been depressed in his room for 3 months.
I've canceled my USA channel.
How about that?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And this is a good life lesson for your kid. You don't always get what you want. Move on. But that was great, man. I'm not a huge wrestling fan, but I would love to get a little bit more into that every week, because clearly.
Like you said, dude, I can do this all.
I love it. You could and you know what the hell you're talking about, man. I'm over here sitting at a disadvantage, but that's awesome. So sorry, again, man. I missed last week, and we lots to talk about.
I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
That's another good point. That Kent just brought up. Because let's not forget, that Vince and Hugh Hefner had to be buddies and pals.
Right. Yeah.
Because remember, Sable went to Playboy.
True.
And then China went to Playboy, and I think former WWE, what's her name? She was on my Twitter. Oh, Ashley Mazzaro. She recently committed suicide. She went to Playboy. So like, and then that's kind of what got the WWE in trouble with Sable, because according to Jim Cornette, he said that for some odd reason, Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn and some of these other guys just love Sable. They thought she was the most beautiful thing going. And Jim Cornette's like, okay, but she can't wrestle for squat. Yeah. I was like, are we doing a wrestling show or are we doing a Playboy shoot? What are we doing here? And he was like, he would be sitting in these meetings and they would spend 30 minutes on how hot Sable was and what they want to do with her. And he's sitting like, dude, we just wasted 30 minutes when we could have been getting the card together. And we're talking about this no talent witch. And yet we got guys in here that we got a show to do here in like 2 days. And we're over here talking about Sable. Can we get focused, please?
That whole thing was the brainchild of that one guy. His name is escaping me now, but he's really controversial. He got into the like creative side of the WWE with like no wrestling experience, and Jim Cornette hates him. He's constantly
Vince Russo,
because I was watching that behind I think it was Behind the Ring or whatever it is, the Vice documentary on wrestling.
Beyond the Mat, or Beyond the Mat, Dark Side of the Ring,
and really, really great stuff. And what's his name? Jim Cornette is not a fan of Vince Russo at all.
Vince Russo, bro.
And that was one of the things he mentioned, which is that he wanted to, when Russo came in, he wanted to bring in this sort of like, prey on the sexuality, the edge, and try and bring like the culture of America into wrestling, and really, again, with so many male viewers and seemingly male viewers who maybe are like outside the box male viewers, to have somebody in a wrestling ring with her boobs out is really profitable, but it doesn't necessarily make a good match, right?
Pretty much. And on top of that, dude, what was I gonna say? Dude, supposedly, like, okay, if you want like a good listen, just go on YouTube and look up shoot interviews with Jim Cornette. You will not be disappointed, because Jim Cornette was a guy who, like you said, hated Vince Russo. He hated everything about Vince Russo, because Vince Russo, when they were in the WWF, Vince Russo was kind of the guy that was behind the whole how do I say that? The attitude era of the WWF.
Right.
Then when he left and went to WCW, they say Vince kind of went in a funk because he really liked Vince Russo. But then Jim Cornette's sitting here like, but dude, he's coming with all these theatrics and soap operas, but we're still kind of in the wrestling phase.
Right.
So you can still get through this without having Vince Russo there. But notice how Vince Russo more or less put WCW in the hole. Remember when David Arquette came out with that crappy ass movie?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Whatever that wrestling
King of the
movie
Ring,
was
not
called.
King of the Ring. I know what you're talking about, with all the WCW wrestlers in it.
Yeah. When he came up with that, what did Vince Russo think would be great to try to get ticket sales for David Arquette? Made him WCW
champion. Yeah, that was terrible. That didn't work out too well, huh?
No, dude, that was the biggest joke ever.
Yeah.
And no one in WCW was okay with it. Even Roddy Piper, when he was in WCW, he was like, when they came to us and told us that David Arquette was legit going to be the WCW champion, he said at least half the locker room was ready to quit.
Yeah, and I would.
And I don't blame him.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him, dude.
Yeah.
You get these guys who've been wanting to be WCW champion for 20 years, and you bring in some jackass celebrity because he wants to promote a movie, and you put the title on him.
Yeah,
that makes us look stupid.
And wasn't that because the WCW had a financial interest in the movie doing well, right? So I think it had a lot to do with that as well, which is like, we want to pump this movie up and make people watch this movie, because I think WCW in many ways like sort of shine the light on what the WWE did eventually, which is like, man, what we can do is, get into production and start talking about movies and then just plug in these wrestlers into these movies. Like, how many shitty movies did John Cena do for the WWE of like him being a former Marine who all of a sudden now he's gone rogue, and it's like these movies that nobody probably ever watched other than the really hardcore John Cena fans, but the WWE put their money behind it, and they damn for sure put their money behind promoting it, because you wouldn't go one Raw or one SmackDown without seeing 20 promos for it.
Right.
So, and the WCW in many ways was like, I don't know if the WWE did that before the WCW, because I'm not sure about the timeline, but I think that was very obvious where the WCW is like, let's put the strap on this guy because we really need this movie to do really well right now.
Right. And like, why, dude? Why? So now when you look at the history books, you'll see that at one point a WCW champion was David Arquette.
Yeah, no,
dude, that's a joke.
Yeah, and
like, you can make fun of Vince McMahon. You can make fun of Vince McMahon all you want to, but he would never put a celebrity as a champ. He'll put you in the ring all you want to, but he won't put the strap on you. If you're not paying your dues, you're not becoming champion.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a huge opportunity for the WWE coming up, is like similar to what they did with like Floyd Mayweather, and then like what Shaq just did with AEW. I don't know if you saw that, but I did. I was pleasantly surprised by how not corny that was and how good Shaq was. I mean, like, Shaq, for a guy that big, had pretty damn good control in the ring. I mean, he did a pretty well executed power bomb for a guy who probably has only done that like 10 times in his life, and also did it well enough to not hurt the guy he's wrestling. So you
gotta remember, dude, those are athletes. You know what I'm saying? Right, those are athletes. So they have the footwork and everything. You just gotta teach them the fundamentals. Yeah. And teach them how to kind of talk with the wrestlers per se when the ring. Bret Hart swears up and down he's never talked to anyone in the ring. I don't know if I want to believe that or not. Yeah. He claims the only time he's ever talked during a match in the ring was when he had to wrestle the British Bulldog for the Intercontinental title, right? Because the Bulldog went on this coke binge for like 3 weeks, and Bret Hart, because remember, Davey Boy Smith was married to his sister Diana, right? And he kept calling Diana like, "Hey, where's Davey at?" She's like, "I haven't seen her in weeks." Oh, man. And then remember, the pay-per-view was at Wembley Stadium in England, or in London, so Davey Boy Smith didn't come and see Bret Hart until literally 4 hours before the match will start. Yeah. And Bret Hart was like, "Dude, I've been calling you for the last 3 flipping weeks, bro. Where have you been at? Like, I've got this whole idea on how the match gonna go." And he was like, he told Davey the match. Davey said he was ready to go. And then Bret Hart said that after the first elbow tie up and he pushed him over, Davey Boy went to Bret Hart. Was like, "Dude, I'm screwed. I just totally forgot everything you told me." Because he had been so high, he had been asleep, he didn't remember anything. So Bret Hart claims that's the only time he's ever talked in his match. But if you could tell these athletes, like, think about it, when Karl Malone was going when him and DDP were going against the NWO, dude, Karl Malone wasn't too bad in the ring. So when you get these pro athletes, I thought the whole Floyd Mayweather Big Show thing was stupid, because you can't convince me that a small Floyd Mayweather, if he has brass knuckles on or not, can knock out the Big Show. Seriously?
No. And if the Big Show was within arm's length of Floyd Mayweather, he's splatting him on the ground. So,
you feel what I'm saying?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say that as but yeah, that was great, guys. Appreciate you checking in again and watching. Obviously, we are jumping in here on a Saturday afternoon right into the good stuff. So we definitely want to talk about NBA All-Star Weekend. It's not, I guess it's not NBA All-Star Weekend anymore. It's one day now, and we're going to be All-Star Sunday. So we'll talk about that and the festivities on Sunday that may or may not, or should or should not happen.
Bro, the NBA can kiss my ass. You're going to tell me you couldn't throw out? Well, you know what? I take that back. I'm going to retract that entire statement, because in your opinion, what are you going to watch more? The NBA All-Star festivities, which would have been today, the 3-point contest, the dunk contest, the skills competition. Yeah. Or are you going to watch 3 championship fights on the UFC pay-per-view later on tonight.
That's a really good point. And
they would have lost hella ratings if they would have pulled that.
That's actually a great point. This is probably the best UFC card that's happened in the last maybe 5 years. So I think,
and
yeah,
and right. I was walking towards the mailbox, bro, to go check the mail, and I was thinking, because I was watching the UFC preview show on ABC earlier before we did the show, like right after. I feel like Dartmouth got a. That's not the name of the team, but I was watching some soccer match and one of the teams got
Dortmund and Bayern. Yeah, Dortmund and Bayern.
Dortmund got screwed. How is that not a foul? How was that not a foul? The guy literally runs with him and bowled the dude over in front of the ref, and the ref let it go, and it led to the game-winning goal for Bayern Munich. And I was like, and dude, those dudes were pissed, and I'm like, bro, referee, you're sitting right there.
Yeah, Bundesliga referees, it's like they let them play, and for some, I mean, the thing is, Dortmund is even they're lucky to even be in that game because Bayern is just so much better. But that dude Erling Haaland, the striker, that tall blonde striker for Dortmund, is a monster. He's gonna get bought this summer somewhere from the Premier League. Chelsea, one of those big money teams, is gonna buy him because he is a monster. But Lewandowski for Bayern is just a savvy veteran, and Bayern is just like, you know, the way that I call Man City in the Premier League, like the Avengers, that's what Bayern is, because they just like, listen, who's the best dude in the Bundesliga this year? We're just going to buy him. How much? 80 million? We'll take him. Bring him in. And it's just like a team full of absolute monsters, like Kimmich and Leon Goretzka, who had a goal today. Absolute beast. Leroy Sané had a beautiful cross into Lewandowski, who finished the goal. And Sané was like 80 million from Man City. Like this is it's a whole nother sort of league. And I watched that too. And you know, I think the big thing with like soccer nowadays is like VAR has really, really killed the flow of soccer games. And you know, I get it. Like they had that one where Kingsley Coman was in the box, and it led to a penalty for Bayern, and they eventually reviewed that. And like, I'm thinking, how many of those plays happened 10 years ago that didn't get reviewed and had that type of effect on a game, and that team lost? You know, it's a different game now, man. And all the stoppages and startings, and you know, we got to check this for 5 minutes, and now we're back. Okay, now you have a penalty. It's just it's crazy. But that was a good game, the Der Classico, I guess is what they call it. So that's
and the reason why I brought that up was because I'm looking at, when I was going back, I was like, dude, shouldn't this card been the ultimate final 2020 card that you and I kept talking about?
Yeah. They just, you know, honestly, Nick, the more that I listen, the more that I'm hearing that the UFC was really desperately trying to hold out a card like this until the crowds were ready. And that, like, they were hoping that, you know, I think that what they were hoping was that maybe if they held it off until now, the restrictions would get better. But, like, you know, we're not ready for that. Like, I think obviously Texas, you can talk about this. Texas has completely lifted the mandates when it comes to masks and social distancing. You know, whether or not you agree with that, I don't agree with it. I'm not sure.
My mask stays home, bro.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, but then Dana White came out like a vulture over a fish market and was like, we're gonna be doing 1 in 10. We might move the card in 2 weeks to Texas. So you know, they're desperate to get fans in the stands because we all know that's how they make their money, and they haven't had fans in the stands for over a year plus now. So I think the UFC was really holding out hope that a card like this will be able to like withstand the times and maybe, you know, be able to have it open to the fans, but that's not happening. But regardless, I mean, I think this is only like the 10th or 11th card in UFC history that had 15 or more fights on it. And then you also, this was the only one of those cards that has 3 title fights on that one as well. So this is going to be a ginormous card tonight. So we'll definitely talk a lot more about that. And then obviously MLB spring training will kind of break out this plan here to do all of our divisions in the coming weeks. But I think
yes, sir.
It might be a little bit early for spring training. I mean, they're not even playing it on the. I know it's early in spring training when they're not even playing the White Sox on TV, which really pisses me off because it's like, why not just have them on TV? Is it you have the cameras there? Just put it like yesterday. I was watching it on Facebook while I'm working. Why is it on Facebook but I can't get it on the TV? I just I don't get that at all. But I want to talk to you about some NFL trade rumors first because I want to get it out of the way. I want to get your opinion on some of this Russell Wilson talk, man, because I'm sure you talked about it a little bit, but we didn't have a chance to talk about it together here. We're hearing, obviously, Russell came out a few weeks ago, and he, his team very, what do you want to call it, very sneakily said, well, Russell's not asking for a trade, but if he were to get traded, here are 4 teams that he would want to go to, right? So it's like, that's like me telling my girlfriend, like, listen, I'm not trying to leave you, but here are 4 girls that I would go out with if we ever broke up. It just doesn't make sense to do that. Very clearly some weirdness between Seattle and Russell. Some people saying it has to do with the lack of offensive line. Some people think it has to do with Pete Carroll. A lot of people say that Russell and his wife / manager / whatever you want to call her, multi-hyphenate Sierra, is just not happy in Seattle, and they would like to go to more of a major city, be able to kind of flourish their careers a little bit more. And Chicago keeps coming up, and as of the last week or so, Chicago has been hot on the list of Russell Wilson, and a lot of people are making rumors of the Bears are heavily aggressive. Like there's all these adjectives. The Bears are aggressive in their pursuit. The Bears are hell bent on getting Russell Wilson, and I have a lot more of a sober point of view on this. But I'll ask you first. What do you think the chances are? And I guess who's a winner there? Because I don't. First of all, I'll give you my quick opinion. I don't think Seattle trades the guy. But what do you think about it?
I don't think Seattle trades him either, but here's the thing, because the 4 teams he chose was what? It was Dallas, Chicago, New Orleans, and Las Vegas. Well, here's the problem. Vegas just re-upped on Derek Carr. Mm-hmm. So, but I wouldn't rule that out yet, because what if re-upping Derek Carr just means that Seattle doesn't have to worry about a quarterback for another few years. Mm-hmm. He's still under contract for X amount of years, so I could probably see Las Vegas. Dallas, I still think that Jerry Jones wants Dak to be his quarterback.
Yeah.
I think Dak is insane asking for $40 million and trying to get paid just a cut under Mahomes. Yeah. But if you think you can get it and Dallas willing to pay it, I'm not upset with you with it. New Orleans is in such cap hell that there's no way that that's going to happen. So the only team that to an extent makes sense is Chicago. Right. I think the question is what are you really willing to give up to bring them in there? Because I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when we get into the NBA, but sometimes I feel like there's almost too much value in draft picks.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if I'm the Bears, my draft pick right now, because I made the playoffs, is what, 20th?
20, yeah.
Somewhere in that area?
Mm-hmm,
okay.
20.
What's the over-under that with the 20th pick that I'm legit going to pick a stud? You know what I'm saying?
And what's the chance that a stud will be available at 20, right?
Bingo.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell me that I could try and come up with some kind of package that's going to surround the 20th pick, which I don't even know who I'm going to pick,
right,
for a guy who's an established quarterback, mm-hmm, who isn't too bad as a quarterback, And think about it, like Tyler Lockett isn't all that great per se of a wide receiver, but Russell Wilson made it work. You know, DK Metcalf is flipping huge, and for whatever reason got passed up by like 30 some odd teams and 30 some odd picks, but seemed to make it work. Yeah. So I think if you're the Bears, if you're not okay, so Nick Foles clearly is not going to be the answer, and you damn near are ready to just part ways with Mitch. If a MVP caliber quarterback is coming to you saying, "Hey, I'd like to play for your team," if that means you got to trade the 20th pick, trade the flipping 20th pick. Because knowing Seattle, they'll take this 20th pick and try to make it into like what's the genius that they drafted out of San Diego State.
Oh, Rashard Penny.
Bingo.
Rashard Penny,
you feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Rashard Penny, and then he just doesn't work out. Like, brother can't even stay on the field, and then you're getting overlapped by guys like Chris Carson and other guys.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm like, dude, if you're Chicago and you're like really sitting there, so you're just laid back in your chair, and all you're doing is you're drinking beer, and this is all you hear. Reports out of Seattle is Russell Wilson says he wants to come to Chicago. So you grab the DVR remote and you're like, wait a minute, that must have been a mistake.
Yeah.
And you're Ryan Pace and you're sitting there and you look at that again. It's like one of the teams in Chicago.
Yeah.
And you're like, really? Man, I would have been on the phone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But let me say this, because I don't know if I made mention of this last week, but I think, like, everyone keeps saying, Russell, why do you want to come to Chicago? Well, why don't we ask Tom Brady why he was so gung-ho to go to Tampa Bay? You know what I'm saying? Of all the teams Tom Brady could have gone to, Vegas wanted Tom Brady. I think Dallas kind of wanted Tom Brady. All these other big-name established teams wanted Tom Brady. He went to Tampa Bay. So at the time, because the Minnesota Timberwolves is now taking over, the worst winning percentage in sports history,
right?
And a man who has now collected, at the time, 6 rings, says he wants to come to this team. And I think Russell Wilson is probably saying, I could build the same legacy if I came to Chicago and turned them from a middle-of-the-road team to a 12-win team to try and get them into the playoffs and eventually try to get them as far as Super Bowl. Because let's not act like Russell Wilson hasn't won a ring and hasn't been there twice. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is, if I'm Chicago, I want to make a deal, but I don't want to bleed myself dry doing it.
Well, yeah.
You know, I don't want.
That's the problem.
I don't want to come out and
is realistically, can you acquire a guy like that without talking about what you're doing? You know, like,
right.
Can you, you know, the asking price for Deshaun Watson, as we have heard, is multiple first-round picks, and some are saying up to four first-round picks, and a defensive stud. The asking price supposedly for Russell Wilson is actually in the same range. But the Bears, you know, the big thing about the Bears is that, listen, the Bears have like 3 to 4 to 5 roster moves that they have to make before they even have the money to do that. You know, they're going to have to restructure Kyle Fuller. They're going to have to ask Eddie Jackson, Khalil Mack. Some of these other guys are going to have to restructure. They're going to have to cut Jimmy Graham, who's Russell Wilson's buddy and was one of the guys who was trying to bring him to Chicago. They cut Buster Screen earlier this week, and they're going to be asking a lot. And more than likely, Nick, Roquan Smith would probably have to be in that deal for Russ, because they want a defensive stud, and I just don't see it happening, man. I don't think the Bears have the cap space. I'm not really worried about the first-round picks. I'll give you 5 first-round picks, to be quite honest. If you ask me.
I'm kind of with you on it.
Yeah, I'll give you 5, because we talked about it a couple weeks ago. The Rams have sort of blown that whole notion wide open about you need to have first-round picks and develop and hit on first-round. No, because the Rams haven't had one for damn near 5 years. They've been in the Super Bowl once and been to, the NFC Championship once. So, like, to me, they've got a lot of precedent to say you can trade multiple first-round picks for a guy that you think is going to be your guy. And to me, Russell Wilson is a franchise-changing type of quarterback. The problem with that is like, okay, then A-Rob is more than likely going to have to get franchise tagged. That's not good business for the Bears because that is like that however many mil. I think it's like something like 13. I don't know. I think it's more than that, actually 17 mil or something like that right off the bat off of your cap space. So then you're looking at, okay, well then when Russ gets here, you're gonna have to call Russ and be like, hey Russ, we just talked to Pete. Great news, you're coming to Chicago. By the way, we're gonna have to talk about your contract because we can't pay you what they're paying you right now. So let's talk about restructuring. And like that's not a good way to start off a relationship with somebody. They just I don't necessarily see this happening. I think I'm encouraged by the Bears being in talks because there's actually a couple of pretty legit sources coming out over the last like 12 to 24 hours saying the Bears are going gung-ho right now and have been heavily aggressive. Good to hear, but I think it's wishful thinking right now until we see it happen. And I'm interested to see what happens because, if you ask a Bears fan who has watched this team over the last 5 years and tell them you're going to be losing Hicks, Roquan Smith, more than likely A-Rob. You're going to have to cut a few offensive linemen. And by the way, you don't really have much money after that. But you're going to get Russell Wilson. I think, there's a lot of people who would hesitate on that, man, because this defense is so predicated on stopping the run. And we've seen even just this year that when Akeem Hicks isn't in there, this team isn't really that great. So, right. if we're talking about, if they want to take Robert Quinn off our hands, shit, I'll drive Robert Quinn to Seattle in a limousine.
I know that's right.
So I'm just saying, like, there's so, Robert Quinn's another guy. He's going to be making like 16 mil this year. I mean, what a terrible signing that was because now not only was he not productive, but he's taking up money from you.
Hey, and Mac, I'll say this too, dude. Seattle needs a Robert Quinn.
Right. Hand on the ground, pass rusher. Yeah.
Exactly, because Seattle runs 4-3, and
right.
we literally just saw all year that Robert Quinn is not necessarily a 3-4 linebacker. He's a 4-3 defensive end. The same nonsense that Jadeveon Clowney probably should have,
yeah.
Some advice that someone should have told Jadeveon Clowney,
right.
but instead he was like, sure, but I want like $18 million though if you want me to be a 4-3 defensive end. Deuces.
And however, look how that
Robert
worked out
Quinn,
for him too.
Right. But if you're Robert Quinn, remember Robert Quinn's best years, especially when he was in St. Louis, the Rams when they were in St. Louis at the time, was
4-3.
It was a 4-3 defensive end, and that's when he had his best years.
Yep.
So I think Seattle would be like, you know what? Okay, fine, we'll take Robert Quinn, especially with the money that you're talking about that he's owed, because that might offset a little bit of what Russell Wilson is bringing in, so it would help out. So I'm with you, dude. I mean, if they say, hey, look, man, we'll take Robert Quinn off your hands because salary makes sense and we need a 4-3 defensive end, sure, take him. Here you go. As a matter of fact,
and I'll give you an extra pick.
At O'Hare on the way.
Exactly right. We booked the flight, and also I'd give up an extra pick. Like if they tell us, well, we'll take one less first round pick, but you have to give us Roquan. I would say, how about we throw in an extra first round pick and we give you Robert Quinn, because I just don't think at the end of the day right now this defense is equipped to run without a middle linebacker like Roquan. Like, I'm telling you, if Danny Trevathan has to be the number one middle linebacker next year, we're in big trouble.
I'm with you on that.
So, yeah, it's a tough one to say, because as a Bears fan, of course, like, any Bears fan who tells you, I don't want Russell Wilson, just throw him in the basement and lock the key, because, lock it up. You don't want somebody like that representing Bears fans, because I hear a lot of dumb opinions on radio, a lot of dumb opinions on the internet right now about how 3 first-round picks, that's a lot of first-round picks. Yeah, and we've missed on like 4 first-round picks in the last like 5 years. So what are we talking about here? It's silly that you have a franchise quarterback on the table for the taking, and you have actual Bears fans who have an actual pulse, and they breathe at the bottom of a glass and it fogs up, and they're still telling you that they don't want Russell Wilson. It's crazy.
Hey, and we'll get into that. We'll get into further that because I feel like that's going to be a theme here. Yeah. Because I'm going to get on Ranger fans later on about this whole Jack Eichel thing. Yeah. Because I'm sick of hearing that too myself. Well, why we got to give out so many first-round picks, dude? If we're going to be in the playoffs, who flipping cares?
Who cares? Yeah, who cares?
You know what I'm saying? Who gives a rat's monkey ass if we're not going to pick 30th in the first round of the 2022 NHL entry draft when we got one of the best young centers in the game, freaking Jack Eichel, who could not wait to get the hell out of Buffalo because they suck so bad, and they lost earlier today to the Fish Sticks too. So that's what I'm saying, dude, because I mentioned this last week. I said with the Bears, the reason why you have to make this move is because at the end of the day, dude, the Bears window is kind of closing a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
But so is the rest of the NFC North. All right, look at it like this. I'm gonna leave the Lions out of this. We know they notoriously suck, but they're kind of coming up. So you have to wait a few years on whatever those Detroit. Mm-hmm. Dude, Minnesota is so flipping overrated, man. Kirk Cousins sucks. What's his name is not really that great of a head coach, and all they do is run the ball. So if you could stop Minnesota from running the ball and you make Kirk Cousins beat you, I'm pretty sure there's an 85% chance you're going to win that game. So no one takes Minnesota seriously. And I think Green Bay is on the downslide. A lot of people are not going to agree with me on this. You think Aaron Rodgers is going to play in Green Bay after next year? I don't.
Yeah,
Aaron Rodgers is going to get the same exact treatment that Brett Favre got. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, we loved you. You tried, but how many more playoff losses are we going to get before we sniff another Super Bowl? You know what? Have fun in San Francisco since it seems that they want you the worst. Yeah. You can have fun in San Francisco. We're going to go with Jordan Love. Dude, if you're a Bears fan and you're a Bears defense, you have to be looking at the chops that now you get to see Jordan Love over Aaron Rodgers. You know what I'm saying? So if you're the Bears, you're sitting there at 8-8. You have a team that's above you that's kind of on the downfall, but then you have two teams under you that aren't going to get any better anytime soon, with the exception of maybe Detroit. But Minnesota's not going to get any better anytime soon. No. So you got to jump when it's hot. Because now you can almost, to be honest with you, if you traded for Russell Wilson and you're able to get, you don't have to get superstar wide receivers.
Right.
Just get guys that can get open and catch the flipping ball.
Sure.
You get guys like that with a guy like Russell Wilson behind you, dude, that's an easily a 10 to 12 win team that can either win the North or just be straight on the ass of Green Bay to make them be like, hey, the Bears are here, man. You guys aren't running the North anymore. We're here, this and that. So I think the Bears really I think they need to make this trade, but at the same time, like you said, it has to make sense. Yeah. Forget the picks. I just don't want to blow up all the nucleus of my defense, which is still one of the top 10 defenses in the league.
Right.
So that I can bring in Russell Wilson, and then we're just back to really being 8-8, and all I have is an expensive quarterback to show for it.
And then like you give up Roquan in the trade, but then to make the salary work, you have to trade or cut Akeem Hicks. So you just lost 2 of your top 4 players on defense as a result. So if you want, there's a lot of, and by the way, the Packers, they're going to be losing Aaron Jones. They're more than likely going to be losing Jamal Williams. Pretty much every receiver other than Devontae Adams is a free agent. They don't have a tight end, a pro tight end as of right now. They've lost a couple of offensive linemen, and their defense got exposed this year. So they've got a lot of moves to make within themselves. If people want my opinion on what I think is going to happen, I think the Bears are going to. I think what's going to happen is Russell's going to come out in the next week or so and say, never mind. I'm okay. We'll stick with it in Seattle. Because remember, Nick, Pete Carroll's not a spring chicken. He's gonna be 70. He's like 70, I think. He's not gonna want to rebuild in Seattle. Like, unless you're getting a pro caliber quarterback in exchange. Like, people are saying, well, they could take the 20th pick and they could turn around and draft Mac Jones. That's not happening. That's not happening. First of all, there may be 5 quarterbacks taken in the first 15 picks this year. That's legitimate.
You are so right.
So if you're waiting at 20, you're gonna be waiting a long ass time for nobody, because people say Mac Jones is not gonna be there at 20. Zach Wilson's not gonna be there at 20. Trey Lance not gonna be there at 20. Obviously Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields sure as hell aren't gonna be there at 20. So you've got minimal options right now if you're Seattle, And I think what Russell did is, to me, this is a ploy from him and his people to put pressure on Seattle to get offensive linemen in there. It's a cry for help that, like, you guys keep swinging and missing. I mean, the Dwayne Brown stuff was a huge swing and a miss because he was never a lockdown tackle, but when they brought him in, he was one of the best tackles available, and they brought him in as if he was some sort of bookend left tackle on the blind side, and he's not. And he's constantly hurt, and then next thing you know, you've got basically 3 out of your 5 offensive linemen this year were pretty much rookies or people who have never played before, and you got Russell Wilson who's frustrated by that. So I think he's voicing his frustration. I think if you want my opinion about what happens, I think he comes out in the next week and says, never mind, I'm with Seattle, we'll talk about this later. And I think the Bears are going to do something really underwhelming, like go after Alex Smith and say Alex Smith and Nick Foles are going to fight it out, and I'm just going to be barfing all training camp, and I'm just going to be a shallow shell of a man this year, because you're going to be hearing Alex Smith be the starting quarterback for the Bears because, oh, remember, he was the quarterback when Matt Nagy was really successful in Kansas City. Great. That's all. Yeah, that's real great, man. Yeah, and Sid Luckman was a quarterback when some of our other coaches was around too. So let's dig him up and put him in a Bears uniform. It's silly. And again, I think Bears fans have such low expectations for this team that, like, have you seen the meme where it was like best quarterbacks in Bears history, and it was like Sid Luckman, Jay Cutler, and the thought of Russell Wilson coming to Chicago, like he's top 3. Just thinking about him in a Bears uniform is like he's a top 3 guy. So I don't think it's gonna happen. And to me, if it does happen, the Bears have to have a contingency plan there to say, all right, great, we just made all of this room and all this space, cap space, and we just gave up all of our draft picks. And by the way, you still have holes to fill. You need a cornerback. You need another safety. You need another linebacker. You need another defensive lineman, another offensive lineman or 2, another wide receiver or 2, another running back or 2. So this isn't a done deal here. Like, it's not like, to be honest, Nick, with Tampa, when Brady came to Tampa, other than the, obviously like Fournette and, AB Gronk, and some of Gronk and other than that, the pieces were in place. They didn't have to do much shuffling. You guys had the room, and that was one thing Jason Light was talking about, was that, like, money talked in those negotiations, because you guys had that money right away and said, listen, Tom, I know Indianapolis is trying to shuffle some things around. I know Vegas is trying to shuffle. Listen, we don't need to do any shuffling. Come over here and sign this contract. And it made it easy for Tom, because then he knows he's got a legitimate defense that doesn't need to, have to go out and do anything crazy. And then on offense, let's be honest, he knew what was going to happen. He knew that AB was going to be available, that Gronk was going to be available, that somebody like Leonard Fournette's going to get cut, and he's going to be able to take Leonard Fournette and make him a playoff guy. So, to me, it's really difficult for Bears fans to come to terms with the fact that we just don't have a lot of flexibility right now, and it's all fine and dandy. You want to trade for Russell Wilson, but it's easier said than done.
Aaron says, I don't know why Gruden doesn't get on the phone for Russ. At some point, he's got to feel the heat making all that money and no playoffs with a new stadium in a new city. You need a face for fans to want to see, and you can offer three first, car, a second, or a third. He said you gave up 2 for a pass rusher. Why not get the guy you never had, which is a franchise quarterback? He brings up a point, because I don't get why Derek Carr is still in Las Vegas. Like, they actually, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if they successfully did it or not, but they were supposed to re-up on him.
Well, yeah, Mike Mayock just came out 2 days ago and was banging the table for him. He's our starting quarterback. We think he's going to be a all-pro quarterback, and they're all in on him.
Right. But I don't have a feeling like they all in on him. They say it.
Yeah.
But the way, like, dude, Derek Carr gets so much crap, because here's a guy that got the Raider franchise. They was in Oakland at the time, in the playoffs like a few years ago.
Yeah.
You you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this guy's in the playoffs a few years ago, and then he got hurt the year after, and now you're in John Gruden's system, which as a Bucks fan and with him being down there, I know firsthand that system is so complicated.
Right.
And you're asking Derek Carr to now try and figure out this complicated offense. I think the problem with Vegas last year wasn't anything they were doing offensively. Mm-hmm. It's just, dude, they couldn't guard their shadow if they wanted to.
I mean, remember the Jets Hail Mary at the end of the game? Like, that's just a microcosm of their whole team.
Exactly. So, my thing is, like, I get what Aaron's trying to say, in where, Vegas needs to move on from Derek Carr. And I feel like the fans are ready to move on from Derek Carr. But between Mayock and, I would say, just Mike Mayock, because with John Gruden, the way that he's been bringing in other quarterbacks, like, there's one thing to bring in a backup, right? Like, it's okay. Let me tell you the difference between John Gruden and Mike Mayock and Jason Light and Bruce Arians. Mm-hmm. Between Mayock and John Gruden, they brought in guys like Nate Peterman. They brought in Marcus Mariota. They brought in Mike Glennon. Because why? If you watch those Gruden camps that he was doing on ESPN,
the QB camps,
the three top guys that he was blowing on that show were Mike Glennon, was Nathan Peterman for whatever reason, it was Marcus Mariota. I mean, he was just blowing the crap out of these guys. And he's like, oh, man, I can make these guys into whatever, this and that. I'm not sure about Derek Carr, right? Meanwhile, in Tampa, they just sat there and tried to say how Blaine Gabbert is going to be the heir to Tom Brady, which I don't buy for more than 5 seconds.
Yeah.
If Blaine Gabbert is supposed to be the heir to Tom Brady, I hope Brady plays till he's 55. Because by that time, Blaine Gabbert will retire.
Yeah.
No flipping way. There is not an inch of tape from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that would make you think that Blaine Gabbert is ready to take over the reins from Tom Brady.
That was just something they said to make Blaine feel a little bit better. We're going to put this out in the media, make Blaine smile a little bit, and
right,
why not?
Because like, you could tell they were sitting there like, all right, Blaine, like, look, I've been hearing a lot of rumors that we're going to go out and get Sam Darnold because he could be cheap, and the Jets might be going quarterback at 2. Allow me to reiterate, you are the
future. You're the future.
You're the future. Okay?
Yeah.
That's why we let Josh Rosen just walk to San Francisco, because you are our future.
And that was weird, man. That was weird. I mean, that was weird. They could have made from what I understand, and maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, the Bucs had a chance to create a roster spot for Rosen, but they didn't want to keep multiple or 3 quarterbacks, I think it was. But to me, man, the practice squad steal of Josh Rosen could be huge for San Francisco because if Jimmy G doesn't work out, he's next in line, and he'll probably get the shot with Kyle Shanahan. I'm telling you, man, with Kyle Shanahan and the receivers that they have in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and obviously George Kittle, and they still have that running attack, and they still have a pretty damn good offensive line. People are still sleeping on San Francisco because the quarterback position has been such up in the air since they made it to the Super Bowl, and Jimmy just, for one reason or another, he can't stay on the field. But then on top of that, he's been underwhelming when he's been on the field. I mean, he's not been a guy like Bears fans who are talking about trade for Jimmy G. Like, at this point, I take Derek Carr over Jimmy G. I take obviously Russell Wilson, but I take a lot. I honestly, man, if you ask me, I take Sam Darnold over Jimmy G. And the reason for that is because Sam Darnold's going to cost me like a 4th round pick. He's cheap, and Jimmy G's going to cost me more than that, and he's going to make like $27 million this year.
Yep.
So, and I get he's from Rolling Meadows, and we love Rolling Meadows on the show, but goddamn, that is a huge price to pay for Jimmy G, and you don't know what you're going to be getting in return. So, I do. I think one thing or another we'll see closer to the draft. I think closer to the draft, I think we'll start to see. I think once teams start to go back to the to the draft board and say, we know this team is going to select this person, we know this team is going to select this person, and once the first like 10, 15 picks starts to materialize a little bit more, I think you can make a more informed trade because, like we said, if Seattle's like, well, shit, man, we really need a pass rusher, and we've got this pass rusher that we really love, he may be there at 20, they may be more inclined to make that happen. But again, like, who's going to be quarterback and see is Pete Carroll going to be taking part in a rebuild? I highly doubt it. And I just see with all the assets they traded last year for multiple guys, including Jamal Adams, and we saw Carlos Dunlap and some of these other like weird moves that they made to give up assets. And it's very clear to me that Seattle is trying to keep Russell. So I think that'll happen. And like I said, I think the Bears are going to do something real dumb and underwhelming and probably go out and get Alex Smith. And, we'll go ahead and see how that works out for us next year. I can't imagine it'll work out too well.
But let me say this too, dude, because now that you mentioned that, you said the word rebuild and it just put a thought in my head. I think both Seattle and Houston are going through, I don't want to call it buyer's remorse. I guess they're trying to rebuild from mistakes. Mm-hmm. Jamal Adams is great. Excuse me.
He's very good. Yeah.
Thank you. Jamal Adams is a really good safety / linebacker hybrid. More people think he's a linebacker than he really is a safety.
Yeah.
But for the package that they gave the Jets for him, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? It got him out of the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, well, hell, let's look at the Houston Texans. To say that the only reason that you're asking for 4 first-round draft picks for Deshaun Watson is because you're trying to rectify the mistakes that Bill O'Brien has made, that you should have fired him at least 2 or 3 years ago before he was able to make those L's.
Yep.
Okay? So because think about it. Deshaun Watson is a really good young quarterback with all the intangibles. But if we're going to talk about success alone, he's not worth 4 first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
He's not. Let's not sit here and act like the Houston Texans were on the fringe of being this Super Bowl contending type of team. They never were. Yeah. They were good enough to win the AFC South. They were good enough to maybe get you 1 or 2 wins in the playoffs. But when you're talking about the perennial teams that could make the Super Bowl, you had the Chiefs. You had the Patriots when Brady was there. You had the Baltimore Ravens. You had potentially now the Indianapolis Colts. And even then, kind of even before Luck retired, you had the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking about Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. The only thing Deshaun Watson got love for was the fact that he got taken. I mean, that Mitchell Trubisky was taken before he was. That was it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
So for Houston to come out and say, I need 4 first-round draft picks, or for Seattle to come out and say, I'm going to need at least 3 draft picks for Russell Wilson, lets me know that you're trying to rectify the mistake that you made by some of the packages you made. When you traded DeAndre Hopkins basically for David Johnson, who happened to just re-up with Houston, and basically a bag of footballs for considered one of the 3, if not the best wide receiver that's playing right now, and DeAndre Hopkins, that's why you ask for 4. When you traded a first-round draft pick, which, by the way, now it's the number 2 overall draft pick, for Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why you rectify that. So when the Seattle Seahawks come out and say, I'm going to need – because what's Russ, like 33 maybe, somewhere around there?
I think he's like early 30s, yeah.
Right. So when you want a 33-year-old quarterback and all you want in return is like 3 first-round draft picks, that lets me know, squirt alert, that lets me know that you're trying to rectify that you just traded a first-round draft pick to the New York Jets for Jamal Adams, which ultimately, I don't want to say didn't work, but it was very lukewarm because your defense still struggled at the end of the day when it needed to come up best.
Yeah,
so that's
you're
what
right.
I'm saying. It's because, dude, every time I look at it, and you want to talk about the most inept franchise right now in football, I mean, look no further than down here in Houston, Texas. Because you're telling me, I don't know if you heard the story. You're gonna tell me multiple teams called your cell phone and your dumbass left everything on the voicemails. You're not picking up the phone and you're not answering. So this is what basically happened. Deshaun Watson came up to you and said, and I quote, after meeting what's the head coach, David Culley, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
But after you guys met, he still said, I'm not coming back to play for Houston, and I am willing to sit out multiple games until you let me go. And when that story came out and your phone was blowing up, somewhere in that pea brain head of yours, in Bob McNair's head, he said, you know what? We're not going to take any phone calls on this. We're just going to have to hold our...
absolutely silly.
Really, dude?
Absolutely silly, yeah. And I think what it is, it comes down to, I think owners are trying to have this mentality of, we're not going to let the player force himself out of town, or we're not going to be threatened by the play. Like, to have Brett Favre's dumbass chime in and say, well, back in my day, we did not request trades and we were not able. And it's like, dude, shut up. No one cares about what you think about this, particular crop of quarterbacks. They, the ownership of Houston is notoriously shitty. And, at the end of the day, when you look at it, they are being put in a really tough position, which is either trade Deshaun Watson or deal with the repercussions of what happens when he doesn't want to play with you. So I still think that I have a very hard time seeing both him and Russell getting traded. It's just... Right. The like I said, we talked about Deshaun before. There's only maybe 2 teams that even have the capability to even trade for Deshaun at that current price, right? Which is the Jets and the Dolphins. The Dolphins seem actually pretty content that even though they haven't put all of their weight behind Tua, they seem pretty content with Tua moving forward next year with 2 first-round picks, another couple second-round picks, and just a lot of draft picks with a lot of flexibility for cap-wise. And then the Jets are like, to be honest, if any other coach but Robert Saleh, and I say maybe they go and get their quarterback, but to me, Robert Saleh is the guy who goes in there and says, you know what? I'm a defensive guy. I'm going to make this defense one of the best in the league, and the offense will figure itself out because he brought some guru from San Francisco who, sat under Kyle Shanahan for a while and just says, you know what? I'm going to let him handle this on the offensive side. Because listen, man, when you look at it, like even this year was a good example of it that, we saw some quarterbacks like Tom Brady struggled pretty heavily in some of the games during the regular season. When you look at both quarterbacks that were in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes looked pretty human. We call him Jesus a lot on this show. And you looked at him against Oakland, you looked at him against Buffalo, looked at him against a couple teams and went, wow, he's not looking like the guy that we thought was God, and now you're like, this guy can be beaten, and all you really have to do is just figure a way out. And really, I think with the NFL, everybody's so desperate to have a quarterback that you're like throwing yourself at these potential quarterbacks. And again, as a Bears fan, I'm really happy if we were to get Russell Wilson. I'd be ecstatic. I'd be nervous about how we move forward because, again, you talked about it. Then you're going to be having, okay, well, great. You just went all in. You brought in Russell Wilson. Now you've got Russell Wilson and Khalil Mack on these really big, giant contracts. Both of them are going to have to show up and show out next year. But then what type of team can you put around them? What type of depth can you really build with that type of team? And are the Bears, after that trade, when you minus what they have to do to get rid of Hicks and possibly trade Roquan, and then you have no first round pick this year and then limited first round picks for the next 3 years, you're really, really, we talked about the window closing, and then you open that window back up, but then after that, it just starts, it's just inching back to closing again. So, it's a tough position to be in, but I just have a hard time seeing Russell or Deshaun getting traded. And if they do, I think if it does happen, it has to happen before the draft, right? You can't have it happen after the draft. So I guess, once we get closer to draft time, we'll kind of see what that looks like. But, yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
My buddy PT3 says, the owners are losing control and they're trying to hold on by a thread.
Facts.
I agree, dude.
That's facts.
I agree 100%. And when he made that comment, I was thinking, I'm like, dude, I'm actually kind of surprised the NFL hasn't locked out a long time ago.
Right, yeah.
I'm saying over stuff like this, I'm surprised they haven't locked out.
Yeah. Like, go back to the NFLPA and say, next time we discuss, we're going to talk about, like, fines or something, some sort, like, the thing that really bothers owners, I think, is that they can go out to the media and tell the media, hey, I'm done, or their agent can come out to the media and say, hey, I'm done, and now the owners are in a shitty position.
By the way, I can't do things at once. My buddy Will just asked me, did you hear that the Knicks are close for a trade for Oladipo? I most definitely don't want. Depends on the price.
Yeah. Hey, dude, listen. I'll tell you, Nick. That's probably going to be cheap because he's on an expiring contract. So like, hey, dude, if they take Ntilikina and even like I don't know about you, but like a guy like Kevin Knox and Ntilikina, take those two and run with that, and I'll take Victor Oladipo.
I'm actually glad Will is on, and this is why, because I can't believe I have to do this. I may have to apologize to Will because do you remember at the beginning of the year when he came on and asked me would I trade 2 first-round draft picks and make a trade package for James Harden? And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that because I want to keep the future, blah, 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 blah. The hypocrite that I can be sometimes, if I look back at this now, I would want to trade 2 first-round draft picks in this trade package for James Harden. Yeah. And the only reason why I say that because the Knicks need a shooter. Yeah. They need a game-changing shooter so bad it is almost unbearable. Like it like kills my soul. It's like if God right now has a torch and he just keeps torching my soul because he knows that we need a flipping shooter. It drives me nuts. Dude, I love Julius Randle as much as the next man. I do not like the ball in his hands down the stretch. I just don't. Because he's great, but he's not like the way the NBA kind of is now. First of all, Julius Randle's not a guy I like playing point forward. I would rather Julius go down the floor, go in the post, and then look at the floor from where it is in the post. Because 9 times out of 10, he's in a mismatch, and whoever he's going up against, he's 10 times stronger than they are, right? But when you look at some of these games the Knicks have lost, oh my God, it's because they can't shoot the flipping ball down the court. Yeah. RJ goes to the hole and can't hit layups. Elfrid Payton goes to the hole and can't hit layups. For a stretch, Derrick Rose, as much as I love him, was going to the hole and missing layups and couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. Yeah. And I'm like, God bless, the Knicks need a shooter. So, but the reason why I'm not against getting Oladipo is because the way that it looks like the NBA picture is now, the playoff picture, where, 7, 8, 9, and 10 play like this little 3-game series to figure out.
So 9 and 10 will play 7 and 8 for the last 2 spots of the playoffs.
Right. So really, you only have, and I did this last week, you really only have 10 teams that you can make a deal for.
Right.
So if as a Knicks fan, if I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the bottom 10, like the bottom 5 for each league, right? Mm-hmm. I see the Washington Wizards are down on that list. But A, does Bradley Beal want to leave Washington? Yeah. Because it seems like he doesn't. And then B, if he did, what would be the asking price for Bradley?
Yeah.
Because that Bradley Beal price or the James Harden price that I just asked about, it's going to really go to Washington for Bradley Beal at the end of the day. But the reason why I'm changing my stance, it's because the Knicks right now sit 5th in the East.
Right.
So if we make the playoffs, we don't have a lottery pick. So now I have to bank on Dallas not making the playoffs. But that may not happen. So if Dallas makes the playoffs and if we make the playoffs, the Knicks have 2 first-round draft picks, but they're both low 20s. And the way the talent in the NBA has kind of been, I would rather trade them for an established stud than trying to
another
see
project.
If I can catch lightning in a bottle and get exactly. So that's why I'm saying, but dude, Oladipo to me would be just fine as long as we're not going to overpay for him. If Victor Oladipo didn't come off some horrific knee injury and was on an expiring contract or whatever, I would say I give up a first-round draft pick for Victor. if he was like under contract for like 3-4 more years, why not?
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen?
See, that's the tough part about both Harden and Oladipo, because Harden also had an option, I believe, and could have opted out within 2 years either way. Before I think he restructured with Brooklyn, but that was another thing that lowered his trade value, was that teams were scared off because you don't have a lot of team control over him in the future. And that's another thing with Victor. I think he's made it pretty clear, and that's why Indiana traded him. He's going to test the market this year. So like the Knicks, barring a deep playoff run, it's going to be hard to convince him to come back. And then, again, you have to start to look at like the Bradley Beal. I think like Buddy Hield is a guy that should,
good one.
Yeah, that should be somebody that's in the conversation right now, because Sacramento is in a weird spot right now. And with Halliburton, their first round pick kind of coming out and having the type of year that he's had and proving, because a lot of people were high on him, but they were weird about his shot. Like, he has such a weird, ugly shot, but he's making shots, and it's like, if he can be a combo 2 guard, that could really help Sacramento in thinking, you know what, Buddy's on a bigger contract. Let's try and get what we can out of him. And this is a lost season for a lot. Listen, the West is a lot less open than the East is. The East is like, you've got, I think, 4 to 5 teams within 2 games of each other in the gut of the playoffs. And then, when you look on top of that with the West, very top heavy, and like you see teams like Dallas, who started off tough, is kind of creeping back up there. Phoenix had a really nice start to the season. They've kind of cooled off themselves. So lots of.
But hey, bro, they're what, second in the West?
Second in the West,
Phoenix
and another thing to take in consideration with Phoenix is like that is a brand new system with a brand new team with a new leader in Chris Paul. So they're only going to get better too. But the other thing that, like, when you look at the standings in the West, you see teams that are in like the 6, 7, 8, 9 range that you're like, these teams are going to pop up and they're going to be up there soon. So we'll see how much Chris Paul means to Phoenix, because if he means everything that we think he means to them leadership wise, he'll be able to get them through these kind of these next couple of weeks, because it's technically, I guess, what you would call the All-Star break. But then when you look at it, yeah, so Phoenix is second, but then you got the Lakers right behind them. Utah, I mean, obviously, having a amazing year, you can't really take that away from them. But then again, you talked about it with Denver, San Antonio, Dallas, Golden State, Memphis, New Orleans. Like, these are all teams that should be better than they are. New Orleans has just had a really tough. I mean, I was really excited for that team, Stan Van Gundy and everything like that. That really hasn't worked out for them. They don't know how to play any defense. Golden State, as good as they've played recently, you look at them and go, do they have enough firepower to really do much? And again, Sacramento is 14-22, and Houston and Minnesota are the only ones that are below them. If you're Sacramento, you might start listening to calls on Buddy Hield soon, and maybe even De'Aaron Fox, right?
Thank you, because I've been jumping on the bit about De'Aaron Fox. I had said in the beginning of the year, because I felt what the Knicks really need in the worst way possible was a point guard.
Yeah,
I was like, dude, Knicks need a point guard so bad. And this is before IQ started really coming along, for New York.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I make that, okay, because think about it, a lot of people were confused. So De'Aaron Fox was on the last year of his deal. And then with the what was it, like the 10th or 11th pick, the Kings take Tyler Halliburton.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like, well, if you drafted Halliburton, that means you finna get rid of De'Aaron Fox. And the next thing you know, De'Aaron Fox and the Sacramento Kings have agreed to a 5-year, like, some ridiculous extension contract. And it's like, okay, so you're going to run with 2 point guards now? And then all of a sudden, Halliburton starts really coming up. And I'm with you, dude. Like, because think about it. You know what's exciting about the Knicks winning as much as they have been as of late? It's the fact that every time you hear a trade rumor, somehow the Knicks are involved in it. Like, what was the most recent one? Tom Thibodeau says that he'll be okay with a Cat reunion.
Cat, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, because Will just told me that first of all, he was right. He said he told me you should have traded Mitchell Robinson when you still had high trade value because he's always hurt. Because he's gone for a month with a broken hand.
Right.
Freak accident. What are you gonna do? It's not like the man was out there acting stupid. He tried to go up for a dunk. It got blocked. They hit his hand. No call. He broke the hand against Washington.
Right.
What are you gonna do? Right. Yeah. Now, with that being said, he was talking about Robinson, Knox, Ntilikina, and 3 picks for Bradley Beal. The only one that I don't like about that is, believe it or not, is actually Frank Ntilikina. You want to know why? Because Frank Ntilikina has the coach for us to see who Frank Ntilikina really is.
Right.
And that's Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah.
What was Frank Ntilikina's MO when he was drafted by Phil Jackson, when everyone thought you should have went out there and got Dennis Smith Jr., was that he was a 3-and-D guy.
3-and-D, right. And he's still, he hasn't been the greatest 3-point shooter, but one thing that he has been is a tremendous defensive player.
And what better way to get more tick when you have Elfrid Payton out?
Yeah.
Than to play defense for Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, and Derek, as much as I love him, man, he's gonna struggle, staying in front of point guards, no matter what. It's really tough with him, and you take what you can get with him on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively, his effort's up. But Tom, there's nothing he can do to make him better laterally,
Exactly. My buddy PT3 says, I need to apologize to you, Nick. Your Knicks are fun to watch. I'm telling you, man. Dude, I get into this argument with this one dude who's a Bulls fan because I go in this group and I always talk about the Knicks and how good we've been and everything. And he's like, your Knicks suck, this and that. And you're a Bulls fan. See, that's why Bulls fans tend to give me gas. Dude, these aren't the same old Knicks, bro.
Yeah.
This is a different team. Now, again, I'm starting to feel the whole Thibodeau wearing down the players thing because my buddy brought up a good point.
Yeah.
When the Knicks blew out, wasn't Minnesota, it was Detroit. I think they blew that. That's right. They blew out Detroit, not this last game, but the one they had the previous in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, we're up by 30, and for some odd reason, Julius Randle and RJ Barrett are in the game. Why, dude? Like, hey, Tom, dude, you're up 30. Here's a crazy idea. Why don't you flip and play Obi Toppin and let him get some play?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, let me get on Obi Toppin for a minute, because I don't know what Amari Stoudemire is doing nowadays. I think he's on the net staff. Mm-hmm. But if he's not, there is not a dude on earth that should be talking to Obi Toppin right now more than Amari Stoudemire, because Obi Toppin can shoot the ball. Obi Toppin can set good picks. But what drives me absolutely flipping nuts about Obi Toppin is he'll set a great pick and roll to the 3.
Yeah.
Brother, if you would have taken 5 seconds to look at the hole, it is a wide open hole and an easy dunk for a guy who could jump out of the gym. Stop wanting to shoot threes and go to the goddamn hole. It's the same thing that just killed Denver about a week ago. 3-on-1, you need 2 points, and 3 guys stay by the 3-point line and you miss.
Yeah.
Like, come on, dude. So if I was Amari Stoudemire, I'd be like, hey, yo, Obi, look, stop. Right here. You just set a pick right here, right? Did you just look at to the right? Now you just saw a wide open lane. That's an easy 2. That's an easy 2 for you right there.
Yeah.
But no, he wants to roll to the 3 because he wants to shoot threes, because now the NBA is now all about threes and this and that. Go to the flipping hole. And there's not a guy alive who could do that better than Amari Stoudemire. Because remember, Amari was actually the roller before he developed a jump shot.
Yep.
You can teach Obi to put all that together, and I swear the pick and roll between him and IQ would be damn near unstoppable. But at the same time, Tom's got to keep him on the floor. Your rookies are going to make a couple of mistakes here and there. Let them learn from it.
Yeah,
don't
that's
let
the tough
Obi
part
make
about
2
Tom,
mistakes,
man.
and then dude.
Yeah.
Don't let Obi take 2 mistakes, and then you're like, all right, let's put Julius back in. No, because Julius is already playing 35 minutes a game.
Yeah.
You need Obi in there to kind of alleviate that from him.
Yeah. Bulls fans are too aware of that with Tom and he I mean, you remember I think it was Derek was a number 2. I'm sorry, no, he was a number 1 overall pick. and it still took him like 25 games for Tom to really play him like he should have been playing in his rookie year. And then, a lot of people were like, oh, he wasn't ready. And then the next year, the guy wins MVP and the youngest MVP ever. So to me, like, you really have to look at it with a grain of salt with Tom, because you look at all the progression that you make defensively and you go, that's worth it, right? Because like the Knicks are one of the best defensive teams in the league right now, and a lot of that has to do with, like, let's be honest, it's not like the roster turned over so much from last year and he has so much more weaponry to work with. No, Tom came in and put in a defensive system that is good for high energy guys. We talked about the league wanting to go to positionless basketball, and Tom is sort of stuck. That's another thing. Tom is sort of stuck in the 1 through 5 mold. He really wants to have a center out there. He really wants to have a point guard out there. He needs to have a wing, a typical small forward wing out there. And I think once he goes away from that, the problem with that is that, like, he does that because that's what makes you guys so good defensively, is he wants to have anchors on every single side of the floor, but you're never going to really, in this day and age, you have to adjust. And I think once Tom adjusts, and I think it might take a guy like Bradley Beal coming there, because Tom will kind of look down and go, okay, I mean, I have this guy now. We have to use him in the way that is going to be most fruitful for the team. And I think, man, if you ask me, I haven't been super impressed with Boston. I haven't been super impressed with Philadelphia. I know Joel Embiid is having a tremendous season, as is Tobias Harris. But I have not been particular, because the Bulls played them and the Bulls almost won if it wasn't for a career night from Embiid. So to me, the East is, again, like, you're looking at teams in the East and going, who is going to jump out there? Like, Brooklyn obviously is up there right now, but with Brooklyn's issues of being on and off, like, I think their big three has only played a handful of games together because of rest, injuries, load management, whatever you want to call it. But then
safety protocols,
right? And then Kyrie just decided he didn't want to play for a couple weeks. So then and then, by the way, like, you got guys like Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, who are probably, like, Drummond, they're trying hard to trade him, but they're going to probably buy him out. And then they already did buy out Blake Griffin now, who apparently is going to go to Brooklyn soon, and because of his connection with DeAndre Jordan and KD. So, you got the East, who is like, okay, sure, we'll give you Brooklyn. But then after that, you're like, okay, I might be. That's why with the Bulls, a lot of people are saying, well, the Bulls should be selling, the Bulls should be selling, the Bulls should be selling. And you're like, okay, fine, I'll sell Thaddeus Young. I'll sell, Garrett Temple. I'll sell.
That's not the name I'm looking for.
I know. And that's everyone else, too. Everyone's like, well, what about Zach LaVine? And it's like, okay, but
that's what I want.
But you're like, at the end of the day, first of all, Zach has really proven a lot of people wrong, both in the league and within our organization. Because remember, he wasn't even like the quote-unquote centerpiece of that Jimmy Butler trade. It was supposed to be that number one pick that ended up being Lauri Markkanen, and then they were like, okay, you could take Zach LaVine and Chris Dunn. So to me, Zach has proven a lot of people wrong, and one of those guys is within the organization. And Karnisovas, who's our new GM, and Mark Eversley, who's like the new kind of, I guess, what you would call player operations, or whatever you want to call him. They're really big on the fact that Zach is going to be coming back next year. Not only coming back, but he's going to be signing a team-friendly deal to come back, which, listen, anytime you as a GM are going, I hope my star player takes less money to stay with me, that's not good business, man. Like, go out and, if you feel like you really want to keep him, go out and pay that man. Do not, do not just come out here and say, well, Zach, maybe you can save us a few bucks. Who else are you gonna get?
Hometown discount.
Yeah, like who else are you gonna get? And the Bulls want to sort of flaunt this idea that, well, Zach, we gave you the chance. Remember, we're the ones who gave you the chance to be the number one. And it's like, did you really give him the chance, or was he just the best player on your team for the last 3 years? Like, I have a hard time seeing a scenario where you get something for Zach this year that's going to be so, because remember, like, Zach's got 1 year left after this year. So a team that trades for him, it's going to keep that in consideration. His deal right now is like in the 20s in terms of millions. Next year or after next year, it's going to be in the 30s. And with the salary going up, I wouldn't be surprised to see some gaudy number like mid 30s for Zach LaVine. So man, it's we'll see. But I know you guys, and I've heard a couple of other teams, including out west. I think Dallas was one name that came up, which was putting Zach side by side with Luka and Kristaps Porzingis. But who are they going to trade for? Like, what are you going to get for him?
They don't have Porzingis.
I don't want that. Porzingis. I'm good on that.
Yeah, because what you call it? We were talking about buyer's remorse earlier.
Yeah, buyer's remorse. Yeah.
I know you saw that story about Dallas secretly looking for the trade value of Kristaps Porzingis. So the Knicks didn't look so stupid on trying to trade him. And it seems like the problem with KP is not necessarily his health, is this genius decided to put in his brother as his agent, and no one can stand his stupid ass.
Yeah.
So if you're KP, you're like, hey man, you're my brother and I love you, but yo, man, like, stop being a douche and getting me traded around the league.
And didn't they say
that's what got him ran out of New York? Right.
And didn't they say that, like, they gave him like a plan to put on muscle and weight, and he was like, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna, I'm just gonna ride this out. And they're like, but we're your team. Like, we're telling you, we need you to put on both. Because that's another thing with KP is I've been proud to see him shoot from the perimeter and stay on the perimeter less this year. But that's a gift and a curse because he's still not at the level where he's beasting people down low. Like, if I'm sorry, but if you're 7'3", man, you should be able to be dunking that ball once every 5 times you're in the paint. Every single time he's in the paint, though, he's getting pushed around by guys like Montrezl Harrell, who's like, a good 6-7 inches shorter than him, and not much thicker than him. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said, but if you're telling me trade Zach LaVine for KP, I'm good on that. And that's another thing. It's like, okay, the Knicks, right? The Knicks can offer some raw players with potential, like Kevin Knox and maybe Mitchell Robinson. We talked about the Bulls have a huge need right now for a center or a big man. Lauri Markkanen won't be. I have a hard feeling that he probably won't be back next year. Or if he does, the Bulls will bring him back, but not match any big contract that he signs. And hopefully he comes back for the home team discount because he can't stay on the court. But the Bulls have a need for a center. So if the Knicks came and said, okay, give you Kevin Knox, give you Mitchell Robinson, talk about maybe Frankie Nitt, and then, when you look at it, you go, okay, but is that worth Zach LaVine? And even like the picks, right? If you give me your pick, well, you guys aren't going to be bad enough to be a top 10, draft pick this year. So then you look at it even more and go, well, then you have to depend on Dallas's pick, but then Dallas's pick may not even be a first-round pick this year. Exactly. It'll fold over to the following year. So you're just like, you don't see any packages that make you go, wow. And with Zach, I think he's proven, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, is he at the level of a LeBron, a Kawhi, a Kyrie, a James Harden, a KD? No, he's not there yet. But is he an all-star? Absolutely. He is an all-star, and he's going to be an all-star, I think, moving forward. But defensively, he wants to play defense, still not good at playing defense.
Who's that?
Zach.
Okay.
Zach. He wants to play defense now. The problem with him in the past was that he didn't want to play defense. He just kind of like, defense, let him go right by, and then I'll get a dunk on the other end. Now he wants to play defense. That's good for him, but still not very good at playing defense. And then on top of that, we talked about it against Philly. He's supposed to be our closer, but then he plays a lot of clutch time, meaning with the under 2 minutes with the deficit being 5. He plays a lot of clutch time, but he's not that great in clutch time. Like, he had that one against Portland that was a long 3, but otherwise he's made some real big mistakes in the last couple minutes of the fourth quarter. So I don't know, man. I just have a hard time seeing the Bulls trading the guy.
Yeah. You know what, to be honest with you, I asked a question on my Twitter not too long ago. I was like, with the trade deadline being here and so many teams really being in the mix, who's really making trades?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, in past trade deadlines, you're like, okay, well, all right, so we're going to look at teams that are probably like 9 and below. And you're like, or I take that at 10 and below, because you know usually your number 9 team is kind of on the brink. It might want to trade for someone to kind of push them up. Sure. But like you mentioned with the East, once you get past Milwaukee at 3, who is it?
I actually got it for you. So it's Milwaukee 3, Boston. Milwaukee is 22-14. They're 3. But then after that, you have Boston, New York, Miami, Charlotte, Toronto, Chicago, Indiana, and Atlanta, all within 2 games of each other.
Right. And then I think what is it? It's like Boston, New York, I think are like a game or 2 games above 500. But then Toronto, Miami, and someone else is at 500. Then the Bulls, Charlotte, which, oh, by the way, I guess LaMelo Ball wasn't so much of a bad draft pick to take, whether you had to deal with LeVar or not.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's one of, dude, here's what's funny. I have been seeing people actually roasting the Golden State Warriors for not taking LaMelo Ball and drafting James Wiseman. Could you imagine if you was really letting, with Clay being out right now, if you drafted LaMelo Ball with the way he can handle the ball, and you let Steph, who's obviously the more elite shooter, play off the ball?
And by the way,
State would damn near be unstoppable.
And by the way, remember what they said about LaMelo is the guy can't shoot. It's going to take him a while to find a shot. He doesn't have a 3-pointer, and this guy has been absolutely lights out from 3 at some points, and he's a facilitator too. That's another thing. People like tried to make him seem like a one-dimensional guy coming out of college, or coming into the draft rather. And the guy is a facilitator. I mean, I have him on my fantasy team, so I follow him pretty heavily. But him and Miles Bridges are like hooking up for at least 3 alley-oops a game, and he's good for at least 6 or 7 assists every game, just because James Borrego trusts him. And remember, they play a lot of point guards. They got Scary Terry, they got Devontae Graham, and him. Those are all really traditional 1-point guards, not necessarily even combo guards. And they play together sometimes at the same time on the floor, with what we talked about, positionless basketball, 3 point guards, a small forward and a power forward on the floor, and PJ Washington is more of like a small forward, and he's playing 5 for them at some point. So I just think that when you look at all the hype around Weissman, it was the fact that he was very tall and had a decent amount of a offensive game. But other than that, what he's shown was he has flashes. But I'm sorry, even Anthony Edwards, man, I'm gonna say it right now. I like Anthony Edwards. I think he's gonna be a great player. But LaMelo should have been drafted over him.
Could not agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more, dude. Because think about it like this: what was I gonna say? Oh, if LaMelo was drafted by Minnesota,
they're better than they are now.
Traded the same night.
Exactly.
Okay, point A. But D'Angelo Russell, I guarantee you would have been traded the same night.
No, you're right.
You couldn't tell me nothing. But I think with Minnesota, they kind of looked at the now, and they're like, well, right now we have a point guard.
Yep. And also remember, they were nervous to split up Cat and D'Angelo Russell because they brought in D'Angelo to make Cat happy, and then in turn what that turned into was, okay, well then now the best player available plays the same position as D'Angelo. What are you going to do? And their coach at the time, Ryan Saunders, who's no longer their coach, was saying, well, we don't want to play 3 point guards on the floor at all times, so Anthony Edwards is more of a 2 or 3. We'll take him. Again, I like Anthony Edwards. I've seen pretty good flashes out of him, but to say that he was worth drafting over LaMelo is just not in the realm of reality, in my opinion.
Which could be the reason why Ryan Saunders' head was on the platter in the first place.
True.
Because they're probably like, man, you drafted this fool while I'm watching LaMelo, who Michael Jordan at the time didn't even want to really draft
he didn't want him
LaMelo
either.
because he didn't want to deal with LeVar Ball.
Yep.
But he had to be convinced beyond belief, somewhat similar to what Brian Cashman had to do with DJ LeMahieu when he first came to New York. Yeah. He had to be convinced beyond belief that this guy was worth it. Meanwhile, so the same thing happens in Charlotte, and Michael's like, all right, fine, we'll go ahead and take LaMelo Ball. And I'm pretty sure he's not looking really that stupid for a guy who once upon a time drafted Kwame Brown with the number 1 overall pick.
Right, yeah.
So to kind of rectify that, that's another theme we've been talking on here about rectifying old mistakes. Here's a good way to rectify it. Let's go ahead and take the best player on the board right now, which is LaMelo Ball, and then we'll just figure out how to fit it in from then on out. I think the way that LaMelo's playing in Charlotte has really been amazing. And now that Gordon Hayward is staying healthy, that team's pretty fun to watch too. Gordon, LaMelo, and that Charlotte Hornets team is really
and Miles
fun to
Bridges.
watch.
Miles Bridges is severely underrated. Like, this guy's got athleticism through the roof, and he's a prime example of a guy who can play 4 or 5 positions because he can handle the ball, he can get down low, he can be a wing. So yeah, I agree with you. Charlotte's interesting, man, because very quietly they put together one of the better teams in the East, and it's all because of James Borrego, who has this mentality of, again, positionless basketball and just bringing in the 5 best players to do what you want to do at that time. So
I think ultimately, bro, what ended up happening was someone had to tell him, hey, here's a crazy idea. Why don't you play LaMelo Ball a little bit more than 20 minutes a game?
Or start him.
Because I don't know if you saw the stat where if LaMelo played like under 22 minutes, they had a losing record. They're like 5 and double digits in losses.
Mm-hmm.
But anything above 22 minutes a game, they were like 16-5 or I don't know, something crazy like that.
And if you adjusted his minutes upwards, he's like all-star caliber numbers too.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So whoever was in his head to say, hey, man, just leave LaMelo out there and let him do his thing should deserve a raise.
And that goes back to some of the worries about LaMelo's frame and that maybe he wasn't big enough for the league and they were worried he was going to be pushed around. I don't see him getting pushed around much. I mean, he's going to the hole against some of the best bigs in the league and against some of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and he's going up strong. And he's not always making it, but he's going up strong. He's not getting bullied. That's another thing. Like, they're like, he's too young. He's used to Chino Hills in Australia, and he's not going to be able. Good luck with that, because now when you see Anthony Edwards, it's almost like this guy was like, he's going to have one really awesome dunk. Like, even that dunk he had against that Toronto game, he had a really bad game that game. Like, he had a terrible shooting night. He was doing really bad on defense, but he just so happened to give the best poster of the year, and everybody's like, #1 pick, he was worth it. And it's like, listen, dude, if you wanted a dunker, you could have taken Zach LaVine #1 the year he came out, because, he was the best dunker in the draft. So, I think LaMelo's going to prove some people wrong. And also, I think James Wiseman is another one who, he got hurt, but I think James Wiseman is going to be a key thing for Golden State moving forward, because Golden State, like, they may miss the playoffs, legitimately may miss the playoffs, and I think without Clay, everyone was saying, well, they won't be the same. But to me, I mean, even without Clay, they've been playing, pretty on par with what you were expecting them to play with. Really, the X factor to me has been Draymond Green, and like when he's playing at his top level, they are almost impossible to beat. We saw it against the Lakers not too long ago. I think it was last week, where the Lakers were playing. And the Lakers are going through a skid themselves with AD, and I think they will be fine once AD comes back. But the Lakers are another team, dude. Don't sleep on the Lakers to make some moves, because we talked about a couple weeks ago that Kyle Kuzma stuff is running out. The juice on Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is running out. When you talk about, like, Dennis Schroeder has been a nice addition for them, but really, other than that, they haven't had any impact players that can really come in and help them. And by the way, like, Montrezl Harrell has been good, but was he really worth it for this team to go out of their way to spend salary on Montrezl Harrell when they already had players in place in his position. They need backcourt help, man. Like, Dennis Schroeder can't do it by himself, and like I said, KCP is not that guy. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Lakers start to do, and by the way, the Clippers too, because the Clippers have a lot of decisions to make themselves after this year with Lou Will and Patrick Beverley. And by the way, I mean, I hate to mention this, but Kawhi has an opt-out. Kawhi can leave after this year if he wants to.
Oh, hey, yes. Hey, I am starting it on Twitter as we speak. Kawhi to the Knicks. Dude, you want to talk about the match made in heaven. Let's talk about it. Tibbs plus one of the best defenders in the league, who happens to be one of the top 10 players in the league in Kawhi Leonard. If that's not a match made in heaven, I don't know what is. Dude, take care of Julius first.
Yeah.
Then let's talk to Kawhi. Be like, hey, yo, Kawhi, man. I know you're from Los Angeles.
How did that work out for you, though?
Right. But Los Angeles is the second biggest market. We are the first.
Yeah.
Come to New York and let's show you how it's done. Dude, could you imagine Kawhi Leonard playing in New York in front of Knicks fans? Please stop it.
And by the way, now that you mention it, Nick, I want to mention it because it was breaking news earlier, but I didn't say it. Our commissioner, the commish, Adam Silver, says he believes most players will this isn't what I'm looking for. He's saying they're going to be gunning for fans. Oh, that's what he said. He said for 21 20 so during midseason pressure that league won't mandate vaccines, so they're not going to mandate the vaccine because apparently there's been a lot of skepticism in the league as far as the players are concerned, which I don't blame them.
Right.
So there was a lot of skepticism in the league about the vaccine and how the league was maybe wanting the teams or the players to promote the vaccine, not only take it, but like take it in public and kind of be a promotion for the vaccine, which a lot of players were uncomfortable with. So Adam Silver came out and basically said that the league wanted to have fans come back in the stands as early as this year, but because of the lack of vaccination that they have been able to get done, they're not at the rate that they want to be. So next year, 2022 is when they'll be looking at fans coming back. So, I mean, Adam Silver's not the worst. I think we can both agree he's not the worst commissioner in sports. I think he's done a better job than a lot of people maybe give him credit for. He's had a tougher job, in the NBA than I think like commissioners like Gary Bettman has it easy compared to like when you talk about Adam Silver, right? So, and Silver still gets the same crap that Bettman gets, on draft nights and so on. So, it's interesting to see how the NBA is going to handle All-Star Weekend in particular, or what we talked about All-Star Sunday, because it's supposed to be close to the fans. They literally told the Atlanta politicians and leadership is saying, do not fly to Atlanta. There's no parties in Atlanta. We are no after parties, no clubs, no nothing. And it's like, good luck with that, man, because anytime, first of all, Atlanta, anytime you have an event in Atlanta, the strippers and the prostitutes come out to Atlanta for a reason, because they know we're gonna be eating good this weekend when we come out of Atlanta. So
yes.
That alone, and then you can't. I know they said the players are all gonna be on quote unquote work quarantine, but like let's say for example, I'm a Bulls player. I'm going to see Zach. I'm not necessarily in the All-Star game. I'm not necessarily in the All-Star bubble. So I'm Denzel Valentine. I just booked a ticket to come to Atlanta because I want to see my buddy Zach LaVine play. And I'm gonna go to Kings, or what is it, Ace of Spades or whatever you want to call it in right. Atlanta, because that's just what I want to do. And that's the natural thing that you kind of see is that you can't stop these guys from partying. You can't stop these guys from the nightlife. You can't stop these guys from why have a celebration weekend and then go, there's no celebrating on, after the game, no celebrating. Sorry, guys. So
exactly,
it's stupid. And I think the format's stupid too. I agree with you. They had, here's what I will give them. If you wanted to do, okay, we're going to start All-Star Weekend at 1 o'clock on Sunday, and we're going to go all the way through until the end of the All-Star game. I'll give you that. But to say we're going to have the All-Star game and then at halftime we're going to have the dunk contest and the three-point contest, it's senseless to me.
It really is. Because ultimately this was going to happen. You play the first half, and then you have the excitement of the three-point contest and, for what it's worth, the dunk contest. Mm-hmm. By that time, everyone's tired. So now you're going to ask them to come out and play another half of basketball?
Which is dangerous, while you're cold. Yeah. Yep. So, right. And by the way, guys, I'm sorry. I've been a little distracted because I'm watching the first 3 fights of the UFC 259, which we'll get right into here after this. But the first 3 fights have all been bangers. The first 2 ended in the first round via knockout.
As in the prelims?
As in the prelims, yeah. So this is the pre-prelims, yeah. This is a pre-prelim. So we have 15 fights tonight. So you and I will probably miss another 3 or 4 fights and still have, pretty much the whole prelims and the whole pay-per-view card, to watch.
Because I ain't gonna sit here and lie. I kind of low-key don't even want to go out and drive tonight because I'm really trying to see this fight, dude. 3 title fights, man.
3 title, and like I said, Nick, this is quite frankly, a lot of people have agreed this is probably the best card that the UFC has put on.
In a grip.
I think a lot of people were saying UFC 200. UFC 200 was really awesome on paper, but UFC 200 didn't work out that great. That was the night they had the yellow mat, and it was like Conor, and I forgot who it was. No, it wasn't Conor. I'll look it up for us, but UFC 200 was really stacked on paper, but it turned out to be disappointing afterwards. But 259, man, I mean, we can jump right into it because the early prelims, we've got a couple of quote unquote unknowns on the undercards, but Kai Kara France versus Bontorin, you got Joseph Benavidez versus Askarov, that's going to be a really good fight. Song Yadong versus Phillips, that's going to be a great fight, and then Dominic Cruz and Kenny will fight at the end of the prelims. But then the main card, 3 title fights. You've got Thiago Marreta Santos versus Alexander Rakic. That's going to be a really great light heavyweight fight, and possibly tell you who might be next in the light heavyweight division, because remember, Santos was really heavily favored in after that John Jones fight, but then he just so happened to get hurt and wasn't able to fight for so long. You got Drew Dober versus Islam Makhachev, who is close with Habib, and Habib thinks that this guy Makhachev might be the best lightweight fighter in the world one day. So we'll see about that. But then with the 3 title fights, which I want your opinion on, you got Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling for the bantamweight title. You got, obviously, Israel Adesanya, who is the middleweight champion. He'll go against Jan Blachowicz for the light heavyweight champion, and is going to be hoping to be the champ and double champ. But then you got what after tonight might be considered the greatest mixed martial artist in history, in Amanda Nunes, who is going to go for the featherweight championship against Megan Anderson. Who this is a case of like there's nobody left for her to fight, so she's fighting Megan Anderson because Megan Anderson isn't quite ready to fight Amanda Nunes. But the problem is there's nobody left in the division, and the only other fight to make would be her and Shevchenko, which Shevchenko can't make right now. So let's start with we'll get to the main event. Yeah, go ahead.
Because doesn't Valentina Shevchenko's got a match coming up here soon?
She does. Shevchenko is going to be facing Andrade.
Jessica Andrade, right?
Yeah. So the thought process is that the only time that that Amanda has been really tested has been against Shevchenko, and the only time Shevchenko has really been tested, other than a few other fights where like she had maybe dropped rounds, was against Nunes. So that's going to be an interesting one because obviously like they're both in the same position where they're just kind of beating up on chicks that really don't really have the skill set. So we'll see how that goes, but I have a really bad feeling that tonight Amanda is going to make really quick work with Megan Anderson. Megan Anderson is really tall. I think she's the tallest fighter in the UFC, so she'll have a reach advantage, but the problem is the power of Amanda is just
unreal,
unfair for that division. And I mean, I think she could knock out dudes that are 30 or 40 pounds heavier than her, because her right hand is just next level. So we'll see. You know, she's coming out with a little bit more. She's a little bit less ferocious, Amanda is. I think, you know, she became a mother recently. Her and her wife, Nina, she's another UFC fighter, Nina Askarov, had a baby recently. So like her fight week was not really as like intense. It was a lot of smiling, a lot of hugging Megan Anderson, a lot of happy-go-lucky. Whereas, man, like the Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling face off, they were talking shit to each other in each other's faces. Yan and Jan Blachowicz and Israel were in each other's faces, and Israel was like, you got a cut on your face, and Jan's like, don't worry, it would be fine. Like, it was like intense. So Amanda seems like a confident lady for tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But see, that was the thing when I was watching the pregame show earlier. Because first of all, Megan Anderson is plus 1,000.
Yeah, one of the highest in history. Yeah.
If I had $50 laying around, I would just kind of entertain it.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at her, I'm like, man, she's tall. Like you just said, I'm like, she's tall. She's got a reach advantage. Can Amanda get in on her and whatnot? And then you start thinking to yourself, this is the same Amanda Nunes that knocked out Chris Cyborg, that knocked out what's the other one?
She knocked out Ronda Rousey.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Ronda. Yeah. She knocked out Holly Holm. like, you know, so Megan Anderson, even though she's tall, that's kind of like it. That's like if Stefan Struve came in out of nowhere, because he was like 6'9".
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, could Stefan Struve really beat Francis Ngannou? Even though I know that, you know, Stefan is 6'9". Nah, because Ngannou's too much of a beast. And that's why I think this is at right here. But I'd still entertain it, though, because you never know in the UFC. And you never know if Megan might catch Amanda. And you never – see, you know who Amanda Nunes is? It could kind of remind me of Chuck Liddell. Remember how Chuck was so dominant? Couldn't touch him, couldn't hit him, couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Then Rampage got him on the chin that one time and realized that chin ain't as great as people thought it was, and knocked him out and went for a downfall. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just saying that there's a potential of it happening.
Yeah.
You know, when you face somebody and you know, they might be a little bit, you have the better skill set, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't have skill set and she doesn't have a chance to maybe catch you on the jab when you don't see it coming. But I don't think that's gonna happen, dude. Amanda Nunes right now is just on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And you know, I kind of agree with you, where I just feel like this is at a point where it's just like, hey, Amanda, look, you know, I'm not trying to be a douche or anything, but you know, until Valentina figures this out with Jessica, it's nothing we can do at this point.
And Cyborg's no longer in the organization, so you can't even make that happen.
And what kind of BS is that? Like freaking Chris you take one L, then all of a sudden you try to make Dana White. I mean, I know Dana White's no saint, but how you gonna take one L and then sitting there talking about, well, Dana White's not doing a great job of finding me another fight? How about you do a great job of finding you another fight? You all that
she's always, listen, that was gonna happen. She's always hated Dana. Back when Dana was talking about how she looks like a man and she's basically a man because she's got an Adam's apple and she's probably roided up. Like, Dana said some lot of crazy shit about Cyborg in the past. So I don't necessarily blame her, but I agree. Like, if you're thinking about your career, I want to say, is it one? I think she's in ONE FC now. I forgot where she is. I think it's ONE FC. There's just nobody left for her there either. So yeah, I have a feeling Amanda is not even going to play around tonight. It's going to be like, go right in, grapple, grab Megan, take her to the ground, choke her out, break a limb, you know, ground and pound. I don't think she's even going to put herself in a position to get hit, because that's going to be the only way Megan can win this fight is you know, we saw it with Felicia Spencer. Like, Felicia Spencer came in and was like beating people left and right, and it was like, oh my God, she even beat Megan Anderson. And then like she got in front of Cyborg and got in front of Amanda and was just like, over. That's it. You can't. There's nothing you can do after that. So
right.
You know, the one thing about that is that if you're Amanda, what's next after that, right? So like we talked about the Shevchenko stuff. If for some reason Valentina loses to Jessica Andrade, then you are basically in limbo now, and you don't really have a fighter that you can come in unless the UFC goes out and brings one. Which, let's be honest, there's not a lot of female, there's not a lot of female MMA fighters, especially in the featherweight division, who are going to be coming in and rocking their world as a free agent. So, yeah, I see that one as a pretty easy one to call. So I'll take Amanda. I think it'll get it done by submission in the first round.
What is your thoughts on this? This Jan versus I just had his name up here.
Aljamain Sterling, yeah.
Yeah, Aljamain Sterling, because I feel like maybe there's a lot of people that's looking over Peter. I think there's a lot of people that think that he can take it down. But dude, I wouldn't look over. I think, to be honest with you, I think that's happening in both male title fights.
Really?
Don't get me wrong in where I think Israel is going to win tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But please don't sleep on Jan.
Yeah, people are sleeping on Jan pretty hard.
They're sleeping on Jan so hard.
Yeah.
And like my thing is, if you're Dana White, right? If you're Dana White, the perfect scenario for the main event is for Israel to win.
Right.
Because then that's going to put John Bones Jones in limbo. As a matter of fact, I talked about this last week when you weren't here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw the fight night between Blades and Derek Lewis.
I did. Yeah.
But did you happen to catch Derek Lewis in the post game interview? In the post game fight,
I watched that. I always watch his post fight interviews. Yeah.
What I got out of that post fight was that Derek Lewis's tone really changed from a couple years ago. Remember a couple years ago when Joe Rogan asked him if he was ready for a title shot when he beat the Russian dude? He was like, nah, or not. It wasn't the Russian dude. It was whoever was after him.
Yeah.
He was like, nah, I'm not ready for
take my dumb ass to
fight.
the cardio. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
He's like, I need cardio and this and that. Right.
Yeah.
Well, he looked about as impressive as he could have looked against Curtis Blades last Saturday or the Saturday beforehand.
Yeah.
And when they was asking like, hey, Derek, now that you've beaten who was technically the number one heavyweight, not named Stipe and not named Ngannou, like, where are you at as far, like, how do you feel as far as a championship shot? And he was kind of super humble about it. But what I got out of it was, yeah, I know, Francis taking on Stipe, and then I know that there's John. And I was like, you know what? I know you won't say it, but I'll go ahead and say it for you. Hey, Dana White, how about you get Lewis to face John Bones Jones instead of letting Derek Lewis have to sit here and wait? So you got to wait for this fight, and it has to wait, what? How long are we going to wait for Derek Lewis to get a title shot?
Right.
Year and a half? Because at the rate we're going, that's about as long as we're going to go. Dude, why don't you? Dude, John Bones Jones, no offense, might be great in the light heavyweight division. We don't know what he's like in the heavyweight division. Yeah. And with that being said, he does not deserve a free title shot without putting in any dues.
He's going to have to beat at least one heavyweight, right? You got to beat at least one, right? Yeah.
Something, right? But here's the crazy thing about this. If Israel Adesanya comes out and wins the light heavyweight championship today, something tells me that I should just stay on Twitter and not really post anything on Facebook unless it's about Twitter for the next week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because Adesanya is going to call his stupid ass out, and you're going to watch what John Bones Jones does, what John Bones Jones does best, and that's run. Because the only reason why, think about it, dude. What was the one fight when who filled in for it? Was it Anderson Silva? I forget, somebody had gone down and John Bones Jones didn't have an opponent.
Oh yeah, it was right. Chael stepped in and said, "I'll come in and I'll fight," and John's like, "Nah, I'm good on that."
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it ended up being like Anderson Silva like 3 weeks later, and Anderson Silva, way past his prime, had lost like 2 fights in a row, hadn't looked great, and the only fight he had in the light heavyweight division was against Forrest Griffin, and made Forrest look like a fool, and Forrest was on his way out.
Yeah.
So what Bones does best is run. So when he knew that Jan was coming, and when he knew after all that smack he talked with Israel, he knew that Israel was coming. I'm gonna join the heavyweight division in typical John Bones Jones fashion. Yeah. And I bet you if Israel wins tonight, he gonna call him the chicken that he is until John goes back down to light heavyweight.
Yeah,
I mean,
and by the way, Izzy getting to heavyweight might be tough, man. Because he didn't even cut weight for 205. He came in. He was on the scale with a pizza box. He was not like. And the rumor is, Jan could be close to 225 tonight, which is crazy to think about. That he could weigh in at 205 and then come in a few days later almost 20 pounds heavier. But that's what they're saying. He could come in at around 220, 225, and Izzy might come in at 190. So we're talking about a huge difference there. So, but that's my number one worry is, first of all, to get to Derek Lewis. I agree with you. I think Derek, it's about time you give him a primetime fight. That championship fight that they gave him against DC that wasn't a real thing. It just, he was not ready for DC's wrestling, and DC just kind of outworked him. And really, at the end of the day, like Cyril Gahn, who fought Rosenstruik last week, a lot of people were really low on the performance because it wasn't exciting. He didn't go out and beat Rosenstruik the way, but he picked. Listen, man, people have to understand this about MMA, and they're gonna understand this pretty soon when guys start getting knocked out and lose their whole careers over one knockout. The point of this sport is to hit and not get hit. That is the point. It's not supposed to be pretty. It's not supposed to be like entertaining for you or, oh my God, this is so fun. They're just slugging it out for 5 rounds. No, that's not what this sport is. The sport is you hit your opponent and you avoid getting hit. And Cyril Gahn did that masterfully against Rosenstruik, who, by the way, is a beast in his own right, and people are all the way down on Rosenstruik because he lost to Gahn. But it's like, dude, Cyril Gahn's 8-1 and one of the best heavyweight guys in the whole UFC. So I think it makes sense to
9-0.
He's not. I'm sorry, 9-0. 9-0. I'm sorry. It was 8-1 was Rosenstruik, and now he's 8-2. Right. He's undefeated in the UFC. I think the fight for the heavyweight division to me is if Dana White is hell bent on the winner of Francis and Stipe fighting John. Okay, I may disagree with giving him a free shot, but I think Derek and Cyril should fight each other. I think it should be Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gahn. I think that would be a tremendous test for Cyril because Derek brings everything and more that Rosenstruik brings, but that right hand is clearly. I mean, I feel bad for Curtis Blades. He took a nasty shot and then took 3 nasty shots after. Derek Lewis is a savage, man. Derek Lewis went, he hit him and he was knocked out off of that, off the knee alone. I'm sorry. But then after he hit the mat, Derek hit him with another 3 right in the face, and then Razor Blades' coaches were like, "What the hell was that?" And he's like, "That's on Herb Dean. You talk to Herb Dean about that," because I agree with him, right? If he knees Curtis Razor Blades and he goes out and Derek walks away, and then somehow through the grace of God, Razor Blades gets up and finds a way to get the. Then Derek just made himself look stupid. So you fight until the ref steps in and tackles you off. And to me, Herb is always out of position. I'm sorry. Herb Dean is a great referee, but he's always out of position. How many times, Nick, in the last 2-3 years has action been happening in the octagon and Herb Dean is like this, like he literally has done that 5 times in the last year where he's like halfway about to stop the fight and he stops. And it's like, dude, that's not what a referee should do. Either you're going to jump in there and stop the action or get the hell out of the way. And you're way too close to the action sometimes. And then at other times, like the Derek Lewis stuff, you're way too far. He was 8 feet away from Derek when he landed that knee. And there's no way he could humanly possibly go through and stop him in time. So, I think Herb has a lot lot to do with that going down. But either way, I agree with you. I think, Derek, it's time for him to take the step up. Stop with the humble bullshit, Derek. You are one of the best fighters in the world right now. With some of the performances you put on, I get that his grappling, the problem with that fight was that Curtis was winning that fight. He was grappling. Yeah. He was grappling Derek's face off, and Derek just didn't have an answer for that. But what he was waiting for the whole time was that kind of like that duck down double leg, and he just put that knee right in the side of the head, and it was over. So it'll be interesting to see how tonight's fight affects it, because remember, Izzy's saying if he wins light heavyweight, he's still going to go back to middleweight. So when you look at it that way, the light heavyweight title is on the line tonight, but if Jan loses, he more than likely will have a shot to get it back against somebody. And again, it might be one of these light heavyweights who's fighting tonight, because Rakic is a guy that nobody knows about, but is a beast. And then on top of that, Thiago Santos, we already know this guy went the distance with John Jones and almost beat the guy. So
on one leg,
and he's been out since then. So very interesting. But I want to talk a little bit more about that Aljo and Peter Yan fight, because I think I agree with you. Remember, Corey Sandhagen, he's the dude who had that ruthless knockout against Frankie Edgar a few weeks back. Tall, lanky, white dude, very skilled, but Aljo beat him. Aljo knocked him out. So with Aljo, the big thing with Aljo is that Peter is a lot more compact. Aljo is a lot longer, a lot sort of more flowy, but I think Peter right now is grappling-wise is going to try and grapple his face off the way we talked about Derek Lewis and Curtis Blades. And I think Aljo has to be ready for that, which apparently he says he is ready for that. So it's going to be a creative fight. I think somebody's going to get knocked out tonight, to be honest. I really do think that, because Peter has the power, but Aljo has the creativity. He can knock you out with kicks. He can knock you out with knees. He can knock you out with elbows. So he's got to be ready for that. But as far as bantamweight is concerned, this is as good as it gets, and I think the winner of this gets Corey Sandhagen. That's why I think Aljo makes a lot of sense if he wins this one, man. Because remember, Peter beat Marlon Moraes. He's beaten Jose Aldo, but as far as tests are concerned, has he really been tested in the UFC like Aljo will test him tonight? I'm not exactly sure. So I still have Peter Yan in this one, because I really think that the grappling will be a huge factor, but also 5 rounds of grappling, that doesn't always work out as well as you think it will. 3 rounds, you can pull it off sometimes. 5 rounds of grappling, I don't know. Aljo might have that.
Right. I agree.
And then let's talk about Yan and Adesanya, because again, there's a lot of dominoes that will fall after this one, but we talked about Megan Anderson being like a historic underdog. If Megan Anderson wins tonight, it will quite possibly be the biggest upset in martial arts and just combat sports history if she wins tonight. But then on top of that, you've got this weird fight between Yan and Adesanya that really Vegas can't put their finger on, because everybody understands what type of superstar quality Israel has. But like you said, people are nervous about both sleeping on and depending too much on Yan, because they feel like Yan is maybe a little bit more one-dimensional than Israel is. People have to remember, when I first started watching the UFC, which was like almost 10 years ago now, Yan was actually he was on his way out. Yan had lost, Blachowicz had lost, I think 3 in a row, if I'm not mistaken, and his wife just so happens to be his agent, and they were about to kick him out of the UFC, and they were like, listen, he's going to have to figure something out. And then his wife started emailing Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby and Dana White and all these guys in the UFC, and next thing you know, they go, okay, we'll give him one more contract, and then Yan goes 8-1 in his last 9 fights, and now finds himself in the first defense of his title against what might be the biggest foe that he's ever faced. So Israel, to me, and I think you said it earlier, like I have a lot of confidence in Izzy tonight, because I just think we talked about the art of hitting people very hard and not getting hit very hard. Israel does that better than anybody. I mean, other than that Kelvin Gastelum fight where him and Gastelum were kind of going back and forth, and Gastelum actually tagged him like 10 times in that fight and still didn't even wobble Izzy. And I mean, we saw his face after the fight. Obviously, Izzy's face said it all, but he didn't get knocked out. So that's the most important thing when it comes to power is, can Jan knock out Israel with that left tonight? And I think the answer is yes, but I think the problem is Eugene Merman and City Kickboxing in Australia, their number one sort of like claim to fame is we're going to get you out of the slugger mentality of I'm just going to hit and get hit as a result. Like Dan Hooker's a great example of that. Dan Hooker could have been a championship level fighter 2 or 3 years ago, but the problem was he was not listening to City Kickboxing in the way that he wasn't slugging. He was slugging too much and he wasn't being as strategic. And now you look at him, I think he's on a 3-fight skid. Most recently he lost to Michael Chandler in a big fight there. I think it was a first round knockout for Chandler. So Izzy, to me, man, he has a huge chance tonight to be, I think, once he fights John, Nick, I think he has a legit shot at being the GOAT and being considered the GOAT after that John Jones fight.
Right, I agree. Dude, I'm having a love-hate relationship with my phone right now because there was comments, I guess, put underneath.
Oh.
And I'm just now seeing them. Yeah. Well, not when we were talking basketball.
Yeah, go ahead. It's okay. We'll go back to it.
No, it's all good because Will was talking to us. He was saying that the trade rumor for Oladipo is Knox, Ntilikina, and a protected first-round lottery pick for Oladipo and Justin Patton. And then when we were talking about Kristaps, he said KP will never be the player everyone thought. He's like Spades, a possible 2, a definite 3. He's a third option. And then he was saying LaMelo is a beast this first half, court general, and his shooting has gotten much better. I mean, we got to remember, like, these guys are, well, with the exception of KP, these guys are kids. You know what I'm saying? So right. It's like, I think we as sports fans sometimes, and I think this is the truest when it comes to the NFL, in where teams I shouldn't even so much say teams, but a lot of times it's us fans are so quick to give up on somebody.
Yeah.
The fact that the New York Jets even have Sam Darnold on the trade block, in my opinion, is a joke.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The fact, Deshaun Watson is a little different, but to be honest with you, there really shouldn't be. Okay, Russell talking about wanting to leave is one thing. Tom Brady leaving is another thing. If Aaron Rodgers leaves, that's another thing. Because these guys are more or less, for lack of a better way, are passing the torch. Mm-hmm. But when you have a 20, what is Sam? 23, if that,
yeah, probably, yeah.
23-year-old quarterback on the trading block because you think he sucks when the whole team last year was total ass. You think that's Sam Darnold's fault?
Yeah.
Dude, when did we all of a sudden, okay, I know who to blame. I blame Patrick Mahomes because Mahomes came in the first, because Mahomes came in the first year and just took the lead by storm, and the Chiefs are in the AFC title game and everyone's loving it and wow, woo, woo, woo. So if your second-year quarterback doesn't come in and at least get you to an AFC/NFC title game,
no good.
then your quarterback must suck. You must be trash. We need to go find me another guy. Dude, there's no way you could have told me that when Sam Darnold came in the league 2 years ago, Sam Darnold was actually really good those first few games, and then the Jets overall, along with Sam Darnold, were kind of mediocre towards the end, but you knew that he was a good quarterback.
And he couldn't stay on the field. Remember, he had those weird injuries like the appendectomy and weird stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. I forgot about that. That's right.
Yeah.
But then last year, dude, Adam Gase is just not a head coach. He was garbage.
No, he's
so
terrible.
We're really gonna base and try and trade Sam Darnold, who at this point you can almost get for, like you mentioned earlier, a third or fourth round draft pick.
I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Because he had one bad year for the team that was garbage.
And I don't know about you, but I watched some tape on Darnold last year. Like, not tape, but I just seen clips of some of the throws he's made. Dude, that guy can make NFL throws. He can make tough throws under pressure in tight windows. He had a couple to, some slot, like, remember, he wasn't throwing to anybody too crazy last year. He's still throwing to Jamison Crowder and Braxton Berrios and what is it, Devon Mims and Brashard Perriman. Like, these are not like all pro level guys. So put him on the Bears. Put him with Allen Robinson, which, by the way, that might be the best quarterback Allen Robinson has ever played with in his almost 10-year career now. I agree with you 100%. I think it's specific to quarterbacks, right? Like, if you draft a cornerback, for example, like a DB high, and then that DB has a bad or let's say mediocre first 2 years, you're still going to have him on for the rest of his rookie contract, and more than likely, you're going to give him a shot to see what he can do. But the problem is, because there's only one quarterback on each team that can play and be a difference maker, there is just such a high amount of pressure put on these positions, and a guy like Sam Darnold is just a casualty of the league sort of going to a, what have you done for me lately? Like, okay, great, you were great at USC, and all right, we loved the potential when we picked you, but what have you done for us lately? And really, it's like, but what could he have done for you lately with Adam Gase as a coach and with a terrible offensive line and constantly getting hurt and constantly, having receivers drop the ball or or run the wrong route? Like, I'm sorry, man. I'm not willing to give up.
Le'Veon Bell was a joke.
Yeah, that whole Le'Veon Bell situation was a joke. Remember, they signed Bell, and then they signed Bell before they had a head coach. And then Bell was there before Gase was, and then when Gase showed up, he's like, I'm not sure if I want to use Bell. And Bell's like, I just got here like 2 weeks ago, bro. Like, what are you talking about? So this is downright embarrassing. And that's why I say, like, Robert Saleh, to me, was a perfect hire for the Jets, because it was like, we got to get away from what other teams are doing right now. We've seen other teams go with the quarterback gurus. Good for you. You know what? Bengals have a quarterback guru in Zach Taylor who came in and, the team hasn't been great. But, man, the Bengals are looking upwards next year with all the space they have and the flexibility they have. And, again, a quarterback like Joe Burrow, it gives you a chance. But when you're talking about, the rest of the league and, like, what it looks like with these quarterback gurus, I mean, I'm sorry, but, like, Sean Payton, what have you done for me lately, sir?
Facts.
That's all I'm gonna say. Like, what's his name in? I always forget his name in L.A. McVay. I mean, I get it, bro. Like, okay, thanks for the Super Bowl appearance, but you have nothing to show for that. And I'm sorry, but, like, you just traded the guy that you were gung-ho about, and now you brought in Matthew Stafford. But what happens if Matthew Stafford doesn't work out? Then you just traded the farm for Matthew Stafford, and you might fire this guy who was the instrumental in bringing in this guy in the first place. Like, the whole and again, you don't have to look much farther than Matt Nagy. Like, what's so good about Matt Nagy right now? If you're such a quarterback guru, why couldn't you make Mitch Trubisky good at all? I'm sorry, but why couldn't that be a thing? And by the way, your contingency plan was, well, you know what, we're gonna go out and get Nick Foles because we think he could run that, and all you did was basically derail the whole team this year by bringing Nick Foles into the fold. So it's just like, it's such a double-edged sword, and that's why I say when the Jets brought in Robert Saleh, it was a step in the right direction to say, we're not going to go with the norm. We're going to do our own thing. We have the cap space. Let's build the defense that he wants. We'll get a quarterback eventually that we think will be the next best thing. And to me, like, Justin Fields has got to be on the board for them, for sure. Like, you've got to be thinking Fields in that situation, because it's looking like Urban Meyer's more and more going to be going towards Trevor Lawrence, and he actually was like the one who set up all the the pro day and everything like that. Like, he literally was advising Trevor Lawrence and his team how to do their pre-draft pro day. So that's looking like a lock. But then if you're looking at the Jets, and the Jets I know are like, well, maybe we'll trade it, maybe we'll do this. But it's like, To me, man, go get a quarterback. If you're going to trade Sam Darnold, at least get a quarterback that you think is going to be the guy. Because to me, Sam Darnold would actually do better in with a team like the Bears. There's other teams too. I mean, like look, you have to look at the out west with with some of these teams, like even Denver. Like Denver's probably not married to Drew Lock, and there's got to be some sort of leeway there. So yeah, man, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to see what happens with a guy like Sam Darnold, because when you look at the value of what just happened with the Matthew Stafford trade, and obviously the Carson Wentz trade, and then you look at like maybe the value that may come of Sam Darnold in a few years, I think we'll be looking back and going, holy shit, this team just got Sam Darnold for this price, when these other two teams basically had to give up the farm just to get Matthew Stafford and Carson Wentz.
Right. And who's going to have the most speaking of quarterback gurus, I think the guy that's now going to have the most pressure on him as far as quarterback guru head coach wise is Frank Wright in Indianapolis.
Yep.
Because now you just went out and traded for Carson Wentz, and Philly was so quick and gung ho to get rid of him. But, Philly fans sometimes can be really stupid. And then, you don't understand that you had no Alshon Jeffrey, you had no Deshaun Jackson, you had no offensive line, you barely had a run game. Like
Miles Sanders was hurt. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude, the whole team was so garbage that Doug Peterson, I mean, look, and not to give him no kind of free pass, because you more or less threw the game away, and you can't tell me nothing that you threw the game away in that game against Washington in the last game of the season. And you can sit here and say, well, it was for draft position, because, if we won, we would have been 8th, but we lost and we're now going to pick 6th. You're right. So okay. Looking like an idiot for 2 draft spots. If that's what basically, so if that's what you want to do, man, knock yourself out, and it ultimately cost him his job. But Frank Wright, we know the history between Carson and Frank Wright when they both were in Philadelphia. So hopefully, Carson Wentz can somehow, Frank can shape him up, because I don't think Carson Wentz is that bad of a quarterback. I think that he knew his value, knew that he wasn't a backup, and he didn't want to play second fiddle to Jalen Hurts. Yeah. And of all the teams in the NFL, the team that seemed to be outside of the Bears that really needed a quarterback were the Indianapolis Colts, because Phillip retired. You're still not sold on Jacoby Brissett, so go out there and find you a guy. And here's Carson Wentz. You basically got him for a fraction of the cost of what LA just paid Detroit for Matthew Stafford. So, but I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Frank Wright. But could you imagine if Carson Wentz goes into Indianapolis and kills it in Indianapolis?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
man, dude, Frank Wright looked like an absolute genius at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude.
And no, by the way, I think what was it? I'm forgetting the package, but it's only a first rounder. They only give up a first rounder in that trade if they make the playoffs, right? So like
they make the playoffs.
So right. Like you basically you're okay with that. Like the original package was like, well, multiple first round picks, but with this one, it's a second round pick or a third round pick and a second that can turn into a first when they go to the playoffs. If you're Frank Reich, you give that up every single time, because you know that you got a successful team in the playoffs with this quarterback.
Exactly, and that's why. That's why when we first started the NFL talk, I was talking about I just feel like there's so much overvalue on a first round draft pick. Yeah. Like I have a buddy who for the last 2 or 3 years has always begged Tampa Bay to trade down. And I'm like, why are you always wanting to trade down? Like, why are we trading down just to stockpile more picks?
Yeah.
Like, there are certain teams in the NFL, but I'll give you a class example. Let's say the Bears don't trade for, what's his name? Russell Wilson. Let's say they don't. But to your credit, you said it best. The Bears need so many glaring holes that maybe a team like the Bears could benefit from trading down to stockpile more picks.
Yeah.
But if you're like a team, if you're like that middle of the pack team to that higher echelon, as far as let me put it. If you're a middle of the pack to the lower teams in the draft, as far as from like maybe 18 down to 32. Dude, like, okay, we just saw the Buffalo Bills trade their first round draft pick for Stephon Diggs. How did that work out? Now, don't get me wrong, Minnesota benefited by getting Justin Jefferson, but how did that work out?
And that only worked out. That only worked out because they chose the right guy, right? Like if they chose somebody that we never heard of, or that had a terrible season, or wasn't a good player, we'd be talking about how Buffalo completely, ran to the robbery with that one. So yeah, I agree with you. I think we're seeing more and more that the first round picks are becoming overrated. I think the number one thing with the first picks is like if you're not first to 10 overall, the value of it really starts to drop because it's a classic case of like too many options. It's kind of like when you're in Madden and you're like, you're number 15 and like you're like there's like 15 guys that I can take, and then like you choose one of them and then it turns out that person is basically like a 4th round pick, and you're like I could have done more research. I could have done more homework and maybe traded down. I could have. So it's a gift and a curse to have a lot of draft picks too. Like for example with the Dolphins, like Dolphins and Jets, but like another good example is Oakland when they were still in Oakland. They traded Khalil Mack, and people started to really pinpoint on the players that they selected with those picks, which was like Clelin Ferrell, Josh Jacobs. I think one of them was Henry Ruggs. It wasn't Henry Ruggs, but you start to look and go, well, was Clelin Ferrell really worth? And by the way, he wasn't worth that overall. I think it was something like 8th overall.
Wait a minute. I think okay. Oakland's their own pick was Clelin Ferrell.
But the Josh Jacobs got it. Okay, because they got they got 2. I'm trying to think of who the other player is that they used with the Bears first rounder, but again, it's just like I almost want to say it was Henry Ruggs. I think it was Ruggs now that I think about it, but again, you're only as good as the player that you select. So great, you got the number 20 overall pick, Bears, but like who are you going to take with it and what type of effect are they going to have? Like to me, the Bears have to draft a starter at 20. That's hard to do. That's very hard to do, to say I'm going to go select a guy at number 20 and by the way, he's going to be a starter for me next year. Barring an offensive lineman being available, barring possibly a wide receiver, something like that. It's going to be really hard to see that you can draft a starter at 20.
Yeah, and I was going to say, dude, for a team that could really use some offensive line help, hey, Trent Williams is sitting out there as a free agent. If I'm not mistaken, his contract is up after San Francisco, and all his PFF rating was 91. So if you can't get one better than that, like, dude, that's a great bookend, for a team that's got offensive line help, and you can switch that around, which at the same time, let's say if the Bears did make that kind of move to bring in an offensive lineman, then at that point you got to be like, okay, you know what? It's now time to talk to Seattle. And be like, hey, so about that Russell Wilson trade, I got this 20th overall pick right here.
Yeah.
And if you want, I got another one over here for next year. Trust me, it's going to be okay. I promise you, just lie to Pete Carroll's stupid ass, because I'm pretty sure his dumb ass would believe it. Like, but maybe next year's pick could be in the top 15. And then the Bears somehow managed to pull off a 12-4 record. Like, hey, Pete, man, my bad, dude. My bad. I said it could be up to. Up to 10.
And by the way, like if you're Pete Carroll, what incentive do you really have at this point, right? To say, okay, I'm giving one of the best quarterbacks up to a team that needs it. And by the way, if this team succeeds, the return that I'm getting on my trade is going to be worse and worse. I mean, it's just like if the Bears end up being successful. I mean, we had a shitty year this year, and we're the 20th pick. I mean, that's you have to think about it like this: the 20th pick in the draft, and that's after having a terrible year as far as we're concerned. What's going to happen next year when you have a great season?
The most up and down season. Look no further than Chicago. You start off, what was it, 4-0?
Yeah, it was. I think it was 5-1 at one point, and then boom, lose 8 in a row, I believe. Yeah.
5-7, and then Foles gets hurt, and then brings in Mitch, and then Mitch basically had to save you guys to get into the flipping playoffs.
And let's be honest, we played shitty teams towards the end. We played Houston, we played Jacksonville, Minnesota. You gotta beat those teams, I guess. Yeah, you're right.
Hey, and in fairness, bro, you guys got I don't want to say blown out. You guys got beat by New Orleans, but that was one drop away from pretty much taking the sails out, because I think the complexion of that game would have highly changed.
Yeah.
If that touchdown catch is made.
So thanks, Javon Wims. Really appreciate it, man. You did a great job, and you really helped us out there.
My Christian Randall's in the chat. He wants to know.
What's up, Christian?
Do you guys think the Blackhawks can make the playoffs this year, and who deserves the credit for the way that they're playing right now? Because I feel like because of Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith, and the young kids, especially rookie goalie Lankinen.
Yeah,
that one is for you.
Yeah, Kevin Lincoln has been amazing. I mean, listen, anytime, I think we talked about it earlier in like last month, the Blackhawks have had 6 rookies make their debut this year. So, I think the very obvious answer is you have to look at the scouting department and say they're doing something right now. Because, Kevin Lincoln was a pretty well unknown. He's all of a sudden looking like one of the best rookie goalies in the league. Pius Suter, we've talked about it, has turned out to be an awesome center that has really worked well on lines. Brendan Hagel, these are guys that, you're not necessarily going to be seeing. And by the way, it was sad to see yesterday, but it did help the Blackhawks a little bit. But Brent Seabrook is officially done with his career. Had a tremendous career for his own right, and it was a great run. But I don't want to say happy. You're never happy to see a player retire due to injury, especially like that. But man, that contract was an albatross contract, and it just really, really was killing us when it came to that. So, but yeah, Duncan Keith has played tremendously this year after having a so-so season last year. And then when you look at it, like Patrick Kane and DeBrincat and again, Christian mentioned it, without Doc and without Taves, you're looking at a team that has firepower, but I still think we need another blue liner. I think you still need one more defenseman, maybe like a left-handed defenseman that can play on the left side with one of your kind of young defenders. I think that would really help. And, certainly right now the Blackhawks are in a position, but remember, I talked to you about this a couple weeks ago. The Blackhawks are beating up on really bad teams right now. We're in a division with Columbus, Dallas, Detroit. Yeah, we've pretty much eaten off of 4 teams. And the last 2 games, we just had 2 games with against the Lightning, which the first game against the Lightning we lost by 0.1 second in overtime, and yesterday win in the shootout rather. So we're playing teams tough, but our record is as good as it is because we're beating up on bad teams. So yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility, especially because remember, the new playoff format is expanded.
So let me ask you a question.
Okay, let's talk.
Cause maybe I'm just not paying attention. I'm not smart. Y'all drafted Kirby Doc 2 years ago with the 3rd overall pick?
Yes.
Wasn't Kirby Doc a defensive man when you guys drafted him?
No. He was. Yeah, no, he was a centerman, left wing. Yeah, he's a centerman kind of, but he's since switched.
I keep thinking that Kirby Doc was a defensive. Maybe I'm the one that read
I think you're thinking of Bachvist. I think you're thinking of Adam Bachvist. He's
somebody. I could have swore because I was when I mentioned it last week, both Aaron and Heather corrected me. They're like, "Nah, Kirby Doc's the center."
Yeah.
Who did the Blackhawks pick with the 3rd pick that I swear to God was the defensive man? Maybe I just read it. Maybe I was just too happy that the Rangers got the 2nd pick and took Capo Kakko.
I was gonna say you guys stole Kakko from us that year, but
dude, I thought Kirby Doc was. Maybe he wasn't. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, you're talking about Bachvist. He went 8 overall the year before, and he's one of our I guess young defensive guys, but yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, he's on the trade block. So Anyways, yeah, Kirby Doc is a big one. He was a juniors captain and he broke his wrist, which I'm always flabbergasted at how teams like the Blackhawks and in the NHL allow their young players like that to go out and play in the juniors and give themselves a chance to get hurt for what really matters and what they're really playing for. So I get it. People in Canada give me shit about this all the time. Well, you just don't understand what it is like for the juniors and and it's a very big deal to the hockey community. Frankly, I don't give a shit. I'm a Blackhawks fan.
I really don't either.
Yeah.
Because thank you, New York, for telling Alexis Lafreniere, nah, bro, you staying right here in the red, white, and blue. You could play for Canada, maybe in the Olympics or something. Nah, we're not letting you go play for no World Junior. Nah, you knew what you were signing up for when you entered the draft and then signed your entry-level contract. You will honor this one.
And apparently the only reason why the Blackhawks let him go was because he was named the captain. But who cares? If he's so important to your franchise, you don't let him go. And you see what it as a result, because I mean, the Blackhawks have been decent, but man, we could really use a damn good centerman like him who could score the puck and distribute. So I'm flabbergasted that teams still let non amateur or their professional players go out and play for free for their country for really nothing other than the entertainment of fans. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And then you mentioned earlier about the Blackhawks taking advantage of bad teams. I think that's why people are still kind of holding the phone on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
Because
that division is garbage.
I was because wait, I'm sitting here thinking like, boy, I tell you what, man, these divisions are great. Like I really like the concept. Don't get me wrong, I do.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
Man, let's go back to the old ones because I kind of, I can only watch us struggle against the Boston Bruins for so many games in a year.
Yeah.
But dude, watching the Blackhawks just clown Detroit and how much that franchise, I'm thinking like, dude, I could go for about 2 or 3 wins from Detroit too. To get this
Dallas, Columbus, Nashville, and Detroit. The Blackhawks have basically made their meat off of them. So, and by the way, your division's way tougher too. I mean that division is
Washington, Boston. The
Islanders, Philly, Pittsburgh, and then
Pittsburgh. I forgot about them Guinos. Dude, kiss my ass, dude. So that's why like when I look at the All Canada division, I'm like, to be honest with you, I'd like to play the Senators a couple of times.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. Yeah. Beat up on them. Beat up on Calgary every now and then too. So
hey, how bad that team fell off too. Here's a team. Them and Dallas. Dallas was just in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yep.
And Calgary were the runner-ups in the Western Conference Finals, and both teams blow.
Yeah, really bad. Yeah, and Buffalo is another example of a team that just can't get it right now. And you mentioned it earlier, but Jack Eichel. The thing about Eichel that's very specific is that like this is a kid who's still not even hit his prime yet. He's like going into his prime if you're lucky in a few years. So that's going to be interesting to see because we don't necessarily see that a ton in hockey, right? You don't necessarily see a guy who's in his early 20s who's already on his way out via trade and not necessarily like via free agency. I'm not sure who the players are for him because I think you mentioned it with the Rangers. Like it's going to take something to pry him away from Buffalo because Buffalo's been so shitty the last 20 years. They're okay with being shitty for another year. They're good with that.
I know that's right because after Hasek left, it's kind of just like, okay,
what
I
have
guess
you done? Yeah,
Sabres now. So what are we gonna do? But
Sabres now,
yeah, exactly. And that's I'm actually glad that you mentioned that because. Where was I going? Oh, because Jack Eichel is heavily linked to the Rangers for some reason. No, I know it's not for some reason. It is an
accident. I mean,
because the Rangers need a flipping center.
Yeah,
they need a center in the worst way possible. Like, don't get me wrong, I like Mika. I like, I was watching the Rangers beat the Devils earlier today, 6-3. Philip Hedl, when he's healthy, is an absolute monster. The Rangers may have dropped the ball on Elias Anderson, but we also got Philip Hedl in the same draft. And that, oh my God, Philip Hedl was absolutely amazing earlier today. And he has been for New York. But bringing in Jack Eichel with that team, dude, it would be amazing. Because everyone's like, because you have to read some of these Rangers comments when it comes to some of these groups. It's the worst. Earlier, I made mention to some dude because he's like, I'd rather us get a better draft pick than be a first-round knockout in the playoffs. How many more top-round, first-round draft picks do we need?
Right.
Dude, we just got the same treatment that the Pittsburgh Penguinos got when they landed Sidney Crosby, and then for some reason the NHL got super flipping lazy after they had the season lockout and was just like, we're just going to keep the same
draft order
last year. Yeah. And they got Evgeny Malkin, and they won, 2 or 3 cups since then? Dude, so we just lucked out in getting Capo Caco, and then somehow Jesus was like, I'm not done with you yet, New York, and blessed us with getting Alexis Lafreniere.
Yeah.
Lafreniere. How many more picks do we flip in?
And how much more space do you have for a top round draft pick? That doesn't make sense. Like, if you're in win now mode, go for it, you know?
Let me put to you like this. This Ranger fans aren't gonna like this. But you ever seen the movie Hustle and Flow?
Yeah, of course. Classic movie.
What did Terrence Williams tell the white guy when he wanted that microphone?
Man, it's been
if
so
you want
long.
Quality, you got to pay for it.
Oh,
right?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
If the Buffalo Sabres came and said, we want Capo Caco in a deal package for Jake Eichel, sell it.
Is Caco up with you guys yet? Is he playing constantly?
Oh no, he's playing.
He's playing.
He's
okay.
playing.
Yeah,
he's playing. But you got to get quality. Dude, I can't just give you guys a bunch of just old, irrelevant players. Like I can give you Tony DeAngelo. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure how that's gonna do.
It's not the sexiest,
right?
But I can give you a package that'll include Caco, DeAngelo, a first-round draft pick. And maybe I can give you somebody else, like maybe like a Krostov or somebody, for a center who's not even 25 years old, who's an absolute monster.
And he's not even on a giant contract yet, right? I think he's still on his rookie deal. Or did they extend him? They did extend him. Okay.
I think he did re-up. Yeah, he re-upped with Buffalo. But still, dude.
You're right though. If you're giving up shit, you're gonna get back shit. So if you got to give up something to get something, for sure.
And Caco, I will part with. Lafreniere, I won't.
Right.
You cannot trade Alexis Lafreniere. That's not happening. You can give up Caco though. I can live with that because dude, the Rangers have so many wingers, dude. We have Strome. No, Strome's the center. We have Panarin when he's able to come back. We have Caco. We have Lafreniere. We have Chris Kreider, who all of a sudden got a kick in the ass as of late. We're blessed with so many wingers. We have no center. Could you tell me how great the Rangers would be if you're going to tell me one of my lines is going to have Eichel, Panarin, and potentially Kreider all on the same flipping line?
Yeah.
Make
the danger. That's danger.
Right.
Yeah, just make it happen.
And let me say this: if Caco works out in Buffalo, hey man, look, that's great. I'm glad it works out for you over there. I'm sorry it didn't really work out in here for you, but it's business, bro.
Yeah,
it's business.
Yeah, you can't be mad. You can't be mad because you're still gonna have Jack Eichel as a result, and that's a huge W in my book. So yeah, I agree with you, man.
Christian says Sabres want young defenseman, young wing, and a first-round draft pick. Okay, so and what did I just say? Bingo. Thank you, Christian. That's why you could be my GM. So let's rock with this. The young winger, Caco. The young defenseman, Tony DeAngelo. First-round picks, we got them. I don't need to keep that first-round draft pick. I'm not overvaluing it. I don't need it here because I know if I take Jack Eichel from y'all, I know we finna make the playoffs. So here you can have my lower half of first-round draft pick. I don't need it. I still got other draft picks in other rounds. Take it. I don't care.
And no disrespect to the hockey draft too, but I'm sorry, the picks 20 through 30 does nothing for me in the hockey draft. Nothing.
Thank you. All crapshoot.
Yeah.
All crapshoot. So, and it's not like the Rangers ain't never traded first round draft picks before. How in the hell you think we got Jacob Trouba?
Or that's right, Trouba, yeah. And then Panarin was a free agent.
They pimped him out of Jacob Trouba. They traded, who was it to Winnipeg? Kevin Hayes. Traded Kevin Hayes to Winnipeg.
After getting him from the Blackhawks, yeah.
And then turned around and sold it back to him for Jacob Trouba.
Wow. And Trouba's worked out pretty well.
And when he comes back healthy, dude, I'm telling you, bro, we got Keandre Miller. The Rangers are not trading Keandre Miller. If they said you want Keandre Miller, I'd hang up the phone. I'd be like, I'd just roll with the dice on that one. Nah.
Yeah.
But Capo, Tony, and a first-round draft pick, and maybe I'll give you one extra prospect just to make the deal a little bit sweeter. Please. Make it happen. Let me go on Twitter right now and be like, groundbreaking news out of Madison Square Garden. The Rangers have acquired Jack Eichel from the Buffalo Sabres for Capo Caco, Tony DeAngelo, first-round draft pick, and prospect to be named later. How's Buffalo going to tell me no?
And Buffalo's got to be happy with that return too, because it's like, I'm not sure there's not a lot of teams that can offer you that type of quality in young winger and young defense. I mean, like, just thinking about the Blackhawks, I don't think there's one winger or defenseman that I would say is like, yeah, go ahead and take this person. And even if I did say go ahead and take them, I'm not sure Buffalo would want them. So, right. That's enticing. And if you're Buffalo, dude, like, you just got to cut your losses, man. You can't. You gotta hold the L and just take it for what it's worth and move forward. I'm sorry, I'm going crazy over here because there's an absolute slugfest between Carlos Olberg, who's one of Stylebender's teammates, and the African Savage. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but this guy, I've watched him a few times, and he's great, but he's getting, I mean, this is a slobber knocker right now, and they, oh my God, they are going back and forth. So, I'm a little distracted, but there's 30 seconds left in the first round. I think this is the fifth fight of the card, so I think there's one or two more fights before we get into the actual prelims, and then again, you'll have the pay-per-view tonight exclusively on ESPN Plus, or if you're me, anywhere on the internet, which thanks Dana White for, I know Dana White was so gung-ho about all those Pirates, but not sure you really made the effect you thought you were going to make there, Dana, but
Dana, just all you gotta do is put them on the Fight Pass. Just put them on the Fight Pass.
And you want to talk about somebody who's got foot and mouth disorder is Dana White. Like, you know, this dude just says the first thing that comes to his mind and doesn't think about any repercussions about it. Like, you know, talking about John Jones this week, and he was talking about how, you know, he's not necessarily sold on the fact that John is still I guess you call him a pay-per-view seller. Okay, and then he goes back to the Habib stuff, and Habib hasn't told me to back off, and once he tells me to back off, then I will back off. But Habib apparently is there tonight because Islam Makhachev, his close friend, is going to be fighting. So Habib is supposedly there tonight, and Dana is also there tonight, and part of it is that he wants to get him in the room with both DC and Joe Rogan. They want to get in the room with Habib and really get, like Joe Rogan's bald-headed ass and DC's chunky ass going to go in there and make Habib want to unretire. It's silly to think that. So
it's desperate, bro. That's just called desperation.
That's desperation, yeah.
That's all that is, man.
And Habib sees right through that.
Yeah, and the sad part is, it's like, if you're Dana White, like, I understand you're running a business, but you also have to understand, man, dude, that was Khabib's first fight without his father. Can the man have like a few months to flip and breathe?
Yeah, seriously.
You start crying the blues and blowing up his phone. I'm like, oh man, are you really retired from? Because, you know, we can really be. Dude, why don't you wait till like June or July?
And the worst part about it is he's not even doing it because he like wants to move the division along or like doesn't want to hold up the belt. He's literally just doing it because he wants the money that comes with Khabib. And remember, dude, Dana has been sucking that Middle Eastern dick the last couple of years with all that Gulf Arab money that's coming from Dubai and Fight Island and stuff like that. And remember, Khabib is like Elvis over there. So he is extra incentivized right now to make sure Khabib comes through and at least fights one more time. But the other thing is like there's no GSP fight. The GSP fight is dead. There's no GSP versus Khabib fight. That's not going to happen. And nobody wants it to happen, quite frankly, too.
No.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, but like even to me, I'll be honest with you, I'm more intrigued by Kamaru Usman versus a GSP than I am Khabib versus GSP. That's just, and I'm not even that gung ho about that. I'm just saying that like if it's gonna be GSP, might as well be Usman, who's kind of starting to challenge for some of his records and just broke his most consecutive fights. So I guess that's one. But yeah, Khabib, dude, to me, Khabib doesn't need the money anymore. So it's gonna have to be a glory thing. It's gonna have to be like this guy challenged my title as the GOAT, and that's not gonna be against John Jones. It's not gonna be against anybody like that. So I just don't think Khabib will be pressured, but we'll see, man. Like I said, Khabib will be there tonight. I'm gonna guarantee the plus or minus will be at least 5 times that the camera pans to Khabib, and it's Joe Rogan and DC talking about, man, I can't wait until and it's just gonna be like zooming in on Khabib's face, like. Which by the way,
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I'm saying, dude, it's just overkill from David White. Like, and I agree with you. Like, to be honest with you, I'm just not excited about GSP coming back at all.
Yeah,
like, dude, I've seen your greatest fights. I don't need you to come back for one more match. Like, I don't need that memorable match. You already had it when you won the middleweight championship. So why do I need you for another one?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, that's like if okay, so WrestleMania is within the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's like if all of a sudden you got this match talking about, give me a good one. Oh, I got you. Batista is coming back to take on Kevin Owens in a last man standing match at WrestleMania. Who cares? I don't want to see Batista anymore.
No, exactly.
I don't care about him anymore.
He's an actor now.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? He's an afterthought. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, like that's like if I remember on Twitter when people were literally talking about like what they were mentioning what's his name, Kevin Nash, and they were like, we would love to see Kevin Nash versus the Big Show in a final WrestleMania match. Kevin Nash is like, why? So we can both do 2 moves.
Yeah, and then I have to have back surgery afterwards. Yeah, no, that makes no sense. Yeah.
So why all of a sudden is all of a sudden like, yeah, let's see if we can get George St. Pierre. Dude, George St. Pierre's probably in Quebec chilling, watching, and has all the money in the world from movies, endorsements, and everything.
Yeah,
and doesn't need to come back to have that memorable fight to help Dana White out. Miss me with that.
Yeah, sorry, I reacted as Kennedy, the African Savage, just knocked out Carlos Ulrich, and man, that might have been one of the best first few rounds I've ever seen. These guys were slugging back and forth. Kennedy was losing the fight and eventually finishes what I was talking about is Israel Adesanya's teammate, and apparently a lot of these guys really think of Carlos Ulrich very highly. So this was a huge fight for Kennedy, the African Savage, and we'll see how that shakes out as far as the rankings, because Ulrich came in a little bit high. But anyways, I want to make sure that before we start to wrap, guys, help us out. As always, we're trying to grow on YouTube and on iTunes, Spotify. If you're big on the visuals and you want to see our facial expressions and us when we're doing our lip syncing or singing "I Am a Real American," you can watch all of that on YouTube. And we would really appreciate if you guys supported the YouTube. That's something we're trying to grow in the video aspects of the show overall. So just do us a favor and like and subscribe. And then as far as the audio is concerned, we also are on iTunes. So if you're an Apple person, jump onto iTunes and throw a rating our way. And then Spotify as well. All you have to do is search Mack and Black. You can find all this information, including like all of our audio links and our video links at mackandblack.com. Obviously, we have PodRiver Network on YouTube, so check out PodRiver. You can check out all of our other shows, local level, with our awesome producer, Steve. Really focusing on a lot. So focusing a lot more on the, obviously, the local kind of businesses here. Lots of interesting conversations there, so definitely check that out. But again, guys, mackandblack.com. We are on PodRiver Network on YouTube, so subscribe to that. Throw some comments in. I really appreciate the help. And Facebook, I know we're very Facebook centric right now, but I think I could speak for everyone, on the show when we say we want to expand out of Facebook. Get more into the audio spaces and even the video spaces on YouTube. So do us a favor, let us and give us feedback too, guys. Listen, if there's something that we're missing, something that you want to hear, we have a couple of people who jump in the comments and ask for what they want to hear about in the comments. Please do that. We love to do that because, as you could tell, we don't run out of things to talk about on this show. There's like always something to talk about, and trust me, we're not going to run out of words to say. So please let us know if there's anything we're missing here. But Nick, hope you I would say just take the night off, enjoy the fights, man. Maybe I'm
80-20 on that side of the fence.
Work that double tomorrow. You can DVR the All-Star game. Just
Hey, don't tempt me, because I will. I swear I wake up at 7:30 in the morning. Like,
let's just get it.
I think I'm gonna drive all day. Just me in my car. Just, man, do I want to see this fight so bad tonight?
Yeah. So, and by the way, I totally forgot. We have predictions on Amanda Nunes from you and I, but I want to get your prediction for Aljo and Peter Yan.
I'm going with Sterling in the Yan Aljo fight. And then
and how about Israel versus our boy Jan Blachowicz? This is a tough one to pick.
Bro, you feel me? Like I'm over here stuck. Wow. Dude, I really think I'm gonna go with Jan, bro.
Jan, yeah.
Like, and the thing is I mean, it's no disrespect to Israel, and like, let's say if Israel does win, I'm not gonna come in this show next week and be like, oh my God, I feel like such a dumbass for picking Jan.
Yeah.
But think about it. You just made a great mention. Even though Israel came in weighing in at what was like 200.5.
200, yeah.
And Giannis was at 205.
Yep. Yeah. And Jan had to cut to 205, and Israel had to eat to get to 205.
And the pizza he had in his hand didn't help him to get to 205.
No.
So there's gonna be a few extra pounds behind those hits of Jan, and I really think Jan's coming in this fight disrespected because everyone's kind of really focused so much on Israel and maybe forgetting that he's in the fight. And I think Jan's gonna take some type of offense to it. I think Jan's gonna beat him. But again, I wouldn't be disappointed if Israel wins. It's great, but.
What do you think, a knockout?
For Jan?
Yeah.
It would have to be.
It would have to be, right? Because it's a 5-round fight,
Yeah, and I just don't. Adesanya's ground defense is really flipping good.
Yeah.
So I don't see that going to the ground. And Jan, to me, I think Jan is, you're really going to look at a fight of two strikers. Mm-hmm. Jan's a striker, Israel's a striker. So I don't really see that fight really going to the ground unless someone's desperate and needs points.
Yeah, and I think Jan, grappling-wise, I think you'll see Jan use some of his weight, maybe try and get Israel on the fence, and try and, maybe get Israel sort of in a tough position. But I see Israel coming out with this one, man. I really do think when it's all said and done, Israel will be the GOAT. I've been watching this guy for, a long time, even before he was in the UFC. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast before he was even on, or he was on Joe Rogan's radar, and Joe Rogan was mentioning him on his podcast. In some of the fight companions before he ever joined the UFC, and I had a chance to, join the journey on Instagram to see him go from like an unknown, beating Brad Tavares and some guys in the UFC that nobody's ever heard of, to now putting himself in the position to be solidified as a GOAT. I've got Stylebender. I'm torn on how it happens. Part of me wants to say that it's going to be a 5-round fight and that Israel will just be out on top because he has more cardio and will be able to get more volume in. But another part of me thinks that Israel has a plan to knock out Jan, which is, Jan, his big thing is his left hand, and obviously when you're getting in on your left hand, that means that your right side is pretty much wide open, and one of the things that Israel does really well is that left switch kick. So got to be extra careful for that left switch kick. I think it'll happen with a kick to the face and probably a knockout for Israel. Not sure what round, but we'll have to see.
Yes, sir.
But we'll talk more about that next week, guys. We're going to probably have a baseball segment for you next week. I know we weren't able to jump into baseball. Yeah, we'll jump into baseball next week. And then worst case scenario as well, we'll talk some football draft as well because, that's going to be creeping up on us pretty soon. So, yeah, we've got, even during the slow times of the year, we've got too much to talk about. So, Nick, anything else, my man?
Nah, man, I'm finna go get something to eat.
Enjoy those fights, bro.
Go joke around with the lady for a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And probably gonna prepare myself for this fight.
All right, cool. Well, I'll text you.
Right.
I'll text you and let you know where we're at with the fights, and I'll.
Oh yeah, and dude, yeah, hey, I can't believe of all the people that I know, you do not have a Twitter account.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry. The thing is, I had a Twitter for a long time, but man, engagement on Twitter is so hard because with Facebook, at least you have your friends who can see that, and you're like, okay, my friends are probably annoyed by me, but they'll see this, whatever. But with Twitter, man, it's always been like just texting into a void, and I'm always worried that I deleted my original one because I was saying crazy shit when I was a younger kid, just like saying crazy stuff and just whatever. So. Yeah, I'm gonna jump onto Twitter. You just reminded me. I'll jump onto Twitter and I'll add you tonight, and we'll get to yapping on the Twitters.
Hell right, bro.
All right, my man. Well, be safe out there. We'll and everybody out there, appreciate you. Thanks again for watching, listening, sharing, all of that. For Nick over in Texas, for Steve in the studio, really appreciate it. Peace.
Peace.